and all to a special Come On Get Happy episode of Amazing Spider-Man Classics in association with SpidermanCrawlspace.com. This is episode 27 of the show, and my name is John Wilson. Episode 27 is a cube, 3 times 3 times 3, and we won't get another one of those until 64, which is 4 times 4 times 4, so that's a little bit exciting to me and to exactly 2.5 other people in the listening audience.
You need to go outside more often.
And before we introduce our special guest for this episode, I do want to remind everyone out there in listener land that Amazing Spider-Man Classics is brought to you each month by Roll2Play, your online source for games and gaming accessories. Now through spring, Roll2Play is offering a 10% off deal on all games related to the Settlers of Catan franchise. One of their products is the Settlers of the Stone Age, where you are a member of the early branch of Homo sapiens, and you are struggling to spread your branch out across the world, building skills as you go. You'll need new hunting techniques to protect you from dangers, warm clothes to cross the ice deserts of the north, and boats to settle in Australia. So come join in the adventure that is the dawn of humankind. And that is available at www.roll2play.com. And the store also has a page on Facebook if you search Roll2Play, all one word, spelled with the number 2. And with me today are my two good friends and cohorts in comics, Donovan Grant.
Hi, are you happy? Because I'm happy.
And Josh Bertoni.
I'm on cloud 9. Betty Brant is in Chicago, and I have not a care in the world.
Today we will be talking about Amazing Spider-Man 39 and 40, featuring our new artist, John Romita, and the return of Spider-Man's arch nemesis, the Green Goblin. And to help us take a look at this story, returning by popular demand from one of our most downloaded episodes ever, I give you J.R. Fettinger.
Yes, and since this is the Come On Get Happy episode, I'm happy to be this podcast's very own Dr. Feelgood. So I am ready to go. So if it was one of the most popular downloaded podcasts, what you had 3 as opposed to 2 downloaded this time? Gee whiz!
It was 4 actually.
Oh, marvelous! I tell you,
I downloaded twice.
Well, crap! You threw it off.
Oh, I can take that to the bank now. I can go back to Brad Douglas and demand more money. So
Awesome. Anything to pad out your pocketbook there, JR? You got the check I sent you, right, for being here tonight?
Yeah, but the note that said don't try to cash it for another 6 months was kind of a little bit disappointing. But well,
life of a college student, man. All I can say. Well, you do have a lot of fans among the listeners to the Spider-Man Crawl Space podcast and the people who visit that site. We did have a huge response to that last episode you did with us. Lots of new listeners are here, and it seems a lot of those people stuck around. So you should know that you are loved out there in listener land.
You really?
Seriously.
Because the minute I let out the joke about, oh, you mean 3 people downloaded it, I thought, oh, they're going to take that as a slam or something. But I was just thinking, God, I can't be. I'm just some middle-aged dude, who tries to escape from the humdrum of his normal life by going into the world of Spider-Man, and I can't imagine that anybody would be possibly interested in what I have to say. But it's always nice to know that some people are just as delusional as me. Maybe I have my own little cult, just like Norman does. So
everybody dressing up with JR tattoos on the backs of their necks.
Well, and having carrying around some Metamucil and Pepto-Bismol to help them get them through the day. So
right,
I'm wearing mine right now.
So I
but I won't tell you where. That's my secret.
Right. So I did say that this is a special Come On Get Happy episode of the show. The reason for this is that Steve Ditko left the book on a whole lot of downer notes. Everybody was pissed off at everybody else. And as soon as John Romita starts writing, the first thing he does is apologize to everybody. I mean, Flash apologizes to Peter, Harry apologizes to Peter, Norman captures Peter and puts him in bondage. But, aside from that, a lot of people are really happy now in this issue. So that's a good thing.
He's been wondering who the Green Goblin was, and he's like, don't worry, I'll show you. Just take a seat. Here I am. I'm Norman Osborn.
But before we get into the books, let's talk a little bit about where our new artist has been before he joined us with issue 39. Johnny Romita has quite a history with comics before he started drawing Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, he actually started. Had career as a comic book artist. Started, pretty much around World War II-esque. He was actually doing some Captain Americas, and if you look at the Captain America pencils he was doing, it looks literally nothing like his current stuff, or even the stuff earlier than this. You won't really recognize his style until he starts getting into the romance comics, and that's what he was becoming well known for. And in a way, it really endears him to Spider-Man because a lot of people's faces and a lot of the women's faces are kind of his signature. Betty Brant in issue 40, which we'll get to later on, which to me just screams like romance comics era John Romita. After that, he was on the Daredevil book, obviously, which we all know, and we covered that in a couple of episodes ago in the Daredevil Spider-Man crossover 16 and 17, I believe. And according to lore, those were tryout issues. It was either those were tryout issues for him to come onto Spider-Man, or fan reaction was positive for him doing Spider-Man that he was brought on after Ditko left. And that's pretty much where we are right now with Jazzy John Romita Sr.
In my mind, it's always that he brought the curves to the women that Ditko had at times, but maybe wasn't necessarily as vivacious about as Johnny was. So we definitely have an increase of the sex in the comics from this point forward. Not, actual sex, just,
Well, I don't know. The Green Goblin's going to get some pretty soon.
He does, he and Peter do a lot of undressing in front of each other, as we're going to see, so it could get really interesting really fast there.
Amazing Spider-Man number 39 probably is one of the most important issues in the character's history the reason that you were discussing the entry of John Romita Sr. into the character's history. Because, like you mentioned, the world of Ditko was a very angry, bitter world where everybody was sniping at each other. Right. And plus, it was starting to reflect a lot of Ditko's very cynical worldview. And Stan was having to kind of work around Ditko's very, very twisted worldview. And with Romita being obviously a very different personality, Stan kind of allowed Stan free reign to really work on the soap opera elements of Spider-Man, and there was a statement, and I mentioned it I think in a recent Spider-Man Crawl Space podcast because it was something I read in an essay many years ago. Probably Stan could not have had a co-creator other than Steve Ditko, but it took John Romita Sr. to make Spider-Man as popular as he was.
Right.
Working together with Stan. So really it's a very significant issue in comic book history, really, because this is where I think Spider-Man starts to take off in popularity.
It just adds an entirely different feel to the book, and almost like that was chapter 1 and here's Spider-Man.
Exactly.
As far as
like changing James Bond's.
Yeah.
Like right from this is probably the most iconic cover in ASM's title we've hit yet. And this goes on for decades and decades to just be reprinted and done as models and things. And this iconic cover is just, a prelude to like the important history that me and Josh were talking the other day. This lasts like the rest of the entire character's history, mind wipes or otherwise.
Right.
Obviously this is one of those instances where, Spider-Man was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, but definitely John Romita Jr. I'm going to confuse. I'm going to say senior and junior interchangeably, but John Romita Sr., though not a co-creator, definitely deserves an asterisk as far as the a place in Spider-Man's history as far as making the character what he was. Much more so than Jack Kirby. I know there's some stories out there that try to give Jack Kirby credit for Spider-Man's creation and popularity, but no, there's Kirby it really belongs nowhere near it. Basically it's Stan and Steve, and then basically you could call John Romita Sr. Spider-Man's stepfather. After Stan and Steve's divorce. So,
if I've not said on the podcast, Kirby literally says that he came up with the idea of Spider-Man and then handed it to Steve Ditko because he was feeling generous, which just disgusts me.
Well, there's a Jack. I tell you, some of his claims. I mean, the only claim that may have some merit in fact, from the reading I've done, is that Jack may have very well come up with the name Spider-Man. I mean, Stan has told different stories about where Spider-Man came from. It is possible because Joe Simon had a character called Spider-Man at one time, and it was changed to the Fly afterwards. So, I mean, there is some reason to believe that Kirby may very well remembering that old, because Joe Simon was his partner at one time, wasn't he? Didn't the two of them
Yes.
co-create Captain America?
Yes, they did.
And so Spider-Man was a Joe Simon character back in the 50s. So it is possible that Kirby brought that name. Stan denies it, but again, Stan's memory is not particularly reliable either. But everything else though, I mean, is definitely Ditko or Stan. I mean, the artistic style. I mean, how Peter looked and how Aunt May and Uncle Ben looked, and how how Norman Osborn and the Sandman looked. I mean, that's all Ditko. I mean, none of that is Kirby.
Right.
So anyway, kind of got off tangent there.
No, that's what I want to talk about before we go into it, is where all this has gone and came from. But if we've covered all that, then we can go ahead and dive into the books. First up tonight, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 39, which was released on May 10th, 1966, with a cover date of August. And the person telling us of the amazing events within is Joshua Bertoni.
Hello, yes. All right. And our iconic cover, we have the Green Goblin. Because this is our Come On Get Happy episode, he's got a big old grin on his face, probably because of what is in his right hand. It's a rope, and attached to that rope is a tied up Peter Parker with his clothes ripping off, revealing his Spider-Man costume underneath, as his hands are saying jazz hands, and his face is saying constipation.
Exactly.
But either way, it looks like he wants to get out of there, whether to, jazz hands or something else. And on the bottom, we have the banner, another Marvel first, Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, both unmasked. I imagine the In a World guy from the movie trailer saying that for some reason. This is all Romita, first Romita cover, but, for those of you who missed Ditko, you can still look in the top left-hand corner and see that little Marvel Comics group box with the little Ditko Spider-Man.
Yeah, he'll be there for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, I've told this story before on the Spider-Man Crawlspace podcast, but this was one of those issues. I mean, I do have an original Amazing 39. I didn't go back and get too many of the old original issues, but back when I was a struggling college student many years ago, I saved up the vast sum of $4.50 and went to the book broker in Evansville, Indiana, and bought a probably I don't know what it would be defined. It's better than very good, but it's probably not quite fine. Condition of Amazing Spider-Man number 39, and I was beside myself having this original issue of the revelation of the Green Goblin's identity, and like I've said, I was so ashamed of the ghastly sum that I spent. My father asked me if I got anything at the comic book store that day, and I didn't want to tell him because I didn't want to tell him that I'd spent $4.50 on a comic book. So that unfortunately that dates this old man quite a bit. So anyway, that's and I never did get an original copy of number 40 because the broker their copy was had a torn cover. By the time that I finally did have a job and wind up with some money, the speculators had driven the cost of all the old comics to a ridiculous highs, so I never did get an original copy of number 40. So, but I still have number 39. So
Good.
All right, and our opening splash page has the title, How Green Was My Goblin, which apparently is not that green at all because the word goblin is the only thing in that title that isn't green. It's purple, or at least in my reprint it is.
I have it all green in the original scan.
It's black and white.
Okay.
Donovan has black and white. He doesn't believe in colored comics.
Donovan's colorblind. But yeah, in the Marvel Masterworks, I guess they thought they were being ironic by making the letters for Goblin purple with everything else green.
To match his costume.
Yeah, but then it's like, okay, well, anyway.
You could have Bring Back My Goblin to Me.
Yeah, that they already did that.
I'm just saying, if you want to go back to
Those
that.
titles make no sense.
Well, Stan prepares us with his little blurb. Attention, all web spitters, be prepared for more startling surprise developments than any you've ever seen in any single Spidey Spectacular before. We went all out on this one, so buckle your seatbelts and away we go. The Green Goblin is flying on his glider. He's just finished today's edition of the Bugle, which he doesn't want to take it home. He throws it just into the sky because, frankly, it doesn't look like the Bugle has much to talk about today because their top headline is Spider-Man's identity still a mystery.
And
That's
in
not
other
a
news, the sky is still blue.
Yes, that's not a headline. That's a status quo. So,
Hey, guess what?
yeah,
Barack Obama is still the president.
depending
Stop
on
the
who's
presses.
listening to us.
Oh, yeah, I guess. If you're listening, hello, future people.
Yes, if you're listening when Arnold Schwarzenegger's our president, yes. The Green Goblin tells the readers or the newspaper or anyone in particular that happens to be listening that by now that web-crawling weasel must have forgotten all about the Green Goblin. Therefore, this is the perfect time for me to strike and to get revenge that my soul is hungering for. And we have our credits, and it says script, Smiling Stan Lee, art, Jazzy Johnny Romita. Wow, Stan's sometimes a big dick in the letters pages, but now he's like calling Steve like some other name. I don't know.
It's not Steve anymore. We just talked. Did you fall asleep during the intro? We have a new artist.
I went out to get a pizza and everything, but yeah, it's like this isn't Stan egging us on. Okay, inks, Mighty Mike. Okay, now this is a masterwork, so hopefully I still have the same credits as you guys. But inks, Mighty Mikey
Mickey.
DeMeo.
DeMeo, lettering, adorable Artie Simek. It's still Artie, I know. Well, the Green Goblin, like I said, he's talking to nobody, but what he isn't talking about is how noticeably bulkier he is. He says that. Yeah, he says that he's been waiting long enough. It is now time to strike. He will find Spider-Man's secret identity and reveal it to the world. Psychic blind spot be damned. He was too overconfident before, he says, and that's the only reason why he lost. Not because his previous plans involved luring Spider-Man to Hollywood and hitting him on the head with a rock. As for Spider-Man, he's swinging through the city and worrying about none of these things. Is he worrying about Aunt May? Surprisingly, no, not yet, but give it a few pages. For once, he's concerned...
Can I backtrack just a minute? Yeah, on page 2, there's a couple of things I want to bring up. First of all, Norman is, well, actually, we don't know who he is yet. I just blew that spoiler, didn't I? Yeah, the Green Goblin is... The Green Goblin, like you said, talking to nobody, but he's showing us his 2 big pumpkins. And he says, my little bag of tricks is fully loaded. My stun bombs are more potent than ever. Now, notice how large these pumpkin bombs are. And notice how small his little purple purse is. And I'm thinking, okay, now where is he putting these pumpkin bombs? I mean, do I really want to know? And this is...
Have you seen Mary Poppins?
This is... Not in the last 30 years, I haven't. But anyway, this will come up again later when Norman brings out yet another device, and you're wondering, now where did he pull that from? Okay, and then the next panel, he's feverishly working on his goblin glider, but he says, I've modified my rocket-powered flying broomstick so that it's faster and more maneuverable than ever. That's fine, Norman, but where is your broomstick? I mean, we saw what your broomstick looked like in issue number 14. This is a glider you're working on. So what if you've modified your flying broomstick? You're obviously not using it. Big deal.
If he would have used the flying broomstick, then the outcome of these 2 issues might have been better for him.
Obviously, issue number 122 may have had a different ending as well. But
what does he say in issue? It's either issue 14 or 17. He says, "Aha! I've modified my flying broomstick. Now there will be no fatal error."
Yeah, no chance of fatal error. Yeah, but so anyway,
Now he does actually end up calling this a broomstick again whenever it dies at the end of 40 during the fight. So evidently, he doesn't know when a broomstick is no longer a broomstick.
He's a rich guy. He hires other people to worry about things like broomsticks.
this could simply be Stan again, forgetting that that he keeps switching Norman's hardware on him, and going back to the old Peter Palmer miscue. So anyway, did not mean to interrupt your narration.
Oh no,
there.
feel free. That was gold.
Well, there's also the whole point about how he's telling us he's modified this thing whenever he modified it before issue 17 already.
Well, now it goes up to 11.
It's over 9,000!
One more thing about this that I got. Throughout the entire issue and this issue, all he talks about is, I didn't lose last time. I was overconfident. Now I'm sure I will win. The outcome is already I'll win. And I got more on this later, but he nearly does. But there's one pathetic reason why he doesn't, and it's we'll get
because he doesn't shoot him in the head.
Well, this for all of you Incredibles fans, although we haven't gotten to it quite to the worst part, these two issues are probably the worst case of supervillain monologuing that you're going to see in a comic book.
Oh yeah.
God, yes.
Especially like really getting ahead of myself. Aha! I might as well set you free right now.
If JR were to recite all the dialogue in this book in his Norman Osborn voice, he would not have a voice by the end of issue 40.
I don't think I'd make it halfway through issue 39 particularly after getting through this 2-page soliloquy to actually start the issue. So
another note is that the panel 4 there, the big old close-up grin, that is actually a piece of art that will show up in the animated series.
I've seen that a lot.
Is that the one with the pink background?
Yeah, I think they give it either pink or vari-colored backgrounds, but yeah, whenever they do a close-up on the Goblin during the Green Goblin episodes, it's this picture.
He looks like the Grinch in that cartoon with like his eyelashes and everything.
Oh yeah, well they're sticking out right there. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, him and Maria Hill are like going in all the houses, stealing all the presents.
And his motivation here, he is at this point purely revenging on Spider-Man for getting in his way all those previous issues. Have we had a villain before that was this determined to learn Spider-Man's secret identity?
No one's scared.
Dr. Octopus for like 3 seconds.
Ah, yeah, that was just to humiliate him.
For like 3 seconds. He's like, now let's take off his mask. Oh, never mind.
Betty's getting away. I must go after her.
Yeah, but I mean, why would you go after Betty if she's getting away? That's like a blessing. Speaking of blessings, as we've said, Peter is not worrying about Aunt May for once. He's concerned about his own health and well-being, so he decides to go to Dr. Bromwell for a checkup, but not before giving a janitor a nervous breakdown. As Peter's leaving a maintenance closet that he went into from the outside window. Hey, son, no one's allowed in that broom closet. What you doing in there? To which I got it. No one's allowed in the broom closet? Like, really? Is your world like that small that like you have to hold on to your authority over that? Broom closet? I thought it was a waiting room. I should have known it was the wrong place, though. There weren't any of last year's magazines on the table. I was here all the time. I didn't see anyone go in that room. How in the heck? Poor guy. I know what's puzzling him. Yeah, you do. Wonder what Pete's...
How did Peter get in there? Is this another one of those broom closets with a bay window?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
All comic book buildings must have them.
Well, didn't you see the early part of Spider-Man 2, where he when he was delivering his pizzas? I mean, he came out of the janitor's closet with a half dozen or more pizzas to a bubblegum chomping Emily Deschanel. So.
Oh yeah. Every janitor's closet has a bird's eye view of the city with its own window. Everyone knows that.
And Clark Kent never knocks over all the mops while he's changing to Superman.
He's very coordinated. So Peter wonders to himself what the guy would say, the janitor, if Peter told him that he swung through the window on his web.
Irony count 1?
Yeah, irony count. He's like, I wonder what he'd say if I told him about my web. And Peter wonders a very similar thing the next page. But regardless, Peter actually keeps on wondering what people would say to the point of annoyance. So he goes in for his checkup to Dr. Bromwell, and Dr. Bromwell says, your blood pressure's fine, Pete. You've got the pulse of a superhero.
Irony count 2?
And Peter wonders in that same panel, wondered what he'd say if I hadn't taken off my Spidey suit and he saw it peeping out at him from under my shirt.
Number 3.
Stop wondering things, Peter. Stop.
He'd probably say, what kind of dumbass wears a full-body spandex costume under a long-sleeve shirt and a sweater vest? Probably what he'd be thinking.
In July. Did you notice that he shows up at the doctor's office and just goes right in without an appointment? This would never happen today. Either
Well, he
that or
doesn't have to
Dr.
show his-
Bromwell is the worst doctor in New York City and doesn't have any patients.
Well,
No,
not
Aunt
only
May is
that,
his
but
only patient, and that's enough for him to operate his entire practice. He gets more
well, not only
business
that,
from
but he
Aunt
doesn't
May.
have to show his Blue Cross or Blue Shield card or anything, or proof of insurability or anything like that.
No, of course
As
not.
long as he doesn't go near the janitor's closet, because no one's allowed in there. Okay, well, since Peter hasn't worried about Aunt May yet, Dr. Bromwell fixes that by telling him that if anything exciting happens, Aunt May is going to die. Luckily, you both lead quiet, peaceful lives, which is what your aunt needs now more than anything else. Ha ha ha. Irony count 4. That's right.
I guess this is what they mean on TV when they say check with your doctor to make sure you're healthy enough for sexual activity.
God.
Poor Aunt May can't take any excitement, so wonder how she survived her relationship with John Jameson Sr. then later on if she's so fragile can't take any excitement.
When she was doing John Sr., they got caught by Peter. Wouldn't that be like a double shock?
She likes it when people watch.
Wow. She came before he came? Never mind. And
What are we up to with irony count, by the way?
either 4 or 5. I thought there were 2 in the doctor's office, and there's this one. Was there one before the doctor's office?
The one with like the secretary will be 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, as Peter's walking out, the secretary/nurse, for some reason the nurse is doing what a secretary would do, or I don't know, but she thinks, it must be wonderful to be his age, no troubles, no responsibilities, none of the worries of older folk. Oh, if she only knew. So this starts, so that's irony count. That's irony count 5 or 6.
That's 5.
And we have some more unintentional irony. So this makes Peter go on an angst walk, as he so often do, and he angst walks all the way to ESU, where he thinks, I've never thought of it this way before, but she's my only relative. She's all the family I have. What? You've never thought about that before?
Yeah,
I've just
issue 32.
read that like every 2 issues.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's thinking of extended family now. Like if Aunt May died, he wouldn't have any cousins on
He would
the
have
side of the
other-
family he could go to.
Right, because Aunt May doesn't have any cousins.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
Well, not for another 600 issues, at least, until John Jameson Sr. finds the Rileys. So, anyway.
They're all actors and actresses and robots and spider slugs.
The power of love.
With the power of love, right? So he's angsting. He walks right past Flash, Gwen, and an unnamed ESU guy. Which, it's on now. They are going to be so ticked. Like last issue, Gwen was all mad at him. Flash, they were all ready to fight him. Let's see what they have to say now. There's Peter Parker. Now remember, Flash, we all decided to act friendly to him.
Come on, get happy.
Okay, well, let's see what Flash has to say. Hi, Pete. How's it going? Seen anything of Harry Osborn? Oh, well, unnamed ESU guy. I mean, he's probably got a snide remark. Looks to me like you're wasting your time. Parker's not fine. Wow, that's surprisingly friendly for unnamed ESU guy. Usually he's a lot more vulgar than that. So, yes, everyone's wondering why Peter's walking past them with angst and ignoring them. So right off the bat in John Romita's first issue, we're already repeating plot lines from 8 issues ago.
Now, but do you think isn't this one of the last times this happens?
No, not really.
Okay. Because I was wondering if it was like an example of Romita like emulating Ditko to make this transition smoother, but that he would move away from it. Because I don't remember him being so ignoring everyone and making them hate him later.
It happened when he graduated college.
Well, that's a long way away.
That's like
But it's not a habitual thing after this. Because every other day at college he's been ignoring people and they've been hating him.
Yeah, this is the last time like they finally get rid of this stupid gag.
Okay, so it's a rare thing after this.
All I can say is if Gwen is anything like we remember her, Peter's just ignored her. She's gotta be pissed. So let's see what. I just don't understand him. Sometimes he's as friendly as a puppy.
What the?
Okay, now that's just out of character.
Come on, get happy.
Yeah. While Peter is having a walk of angst, Harry is having a car ride of angst with his father. Well, here's where I get out. Thanks for the lift, Dad.
Now, of course, he wouldn't talk like Willem Dafoe here. He would talk normal. He wouldn't go He wouldn't be doing that.
Why are you using your Green Goblin voice, Dad?
Daddy, you're scaring me. Is anything wrong, Dad? You hardly said a word all the way from the house to here.
Wrong! I'll tell you what's wrong, you dumbass. Who walks around wearing a bow tie and a plaid jacket these days? I mean, look how I'm dressed. A suit, a white shirt, and a black tie, like I could work for IBM or something. You look like you're trying to audition for Jack Benny or something. Who dresses like that anymore? You're no son of mine.
You never understood my fashion choices.
Awesome.
I mean, who dresses? It's like, Harry. It's just funny. Harry wonders what's wrong. What's wrong? Why do people treat me this way or whatever? I mean, look how you're dressed. Oh boy.
He's stuck 10 years ago.
I guess I could say, there's nothing wrong. Did you want me to give you a lift or deliver a speech on the way?
I didn't mean to get you angry. I was just wondering.
Well, don't wonder. It cost me a fortune to keep you in college, so try thinking about your studies once in a while.
And it makes sense because he is like in Goblin mode in the sense that, he's not amnesic yet. Like me and Josh talked on Close Light Chronicles on how, like the difference between him as Norman Osborn and him when Norman Osborn doesn't know he's the Green Goblin. So it would actually make sense for him to use this hilarious voice.
Except for an internal monologue.
Yes.
That's true. Of course, he's always angry. It doesn't matter, whether he remembers he's a goblin or not. Well, no, I mean, he does kind of turn nice and cuddly there after that massive electrical shock. But yeah, even though he's not necessarily a goblin, he's still an angry, annoying SOB. So.
Well, Harry decides to save gas and the environment by continuing his drive of angst to making it a walk of angst, but his angst walk is so focused that he completely tunes out Gwen, Flash, and yes, even random ESU guy.
Not him.
Yeah, I know. So Peter notices, never saw Harry so quiet. Normally he'd have tossed a dozen insults my way by now. What's the matter, Harry? Anything wrong? Aren't you feeling well? Oh, yeah, now we remember Harry and Peter's history. Harry's gonna chew his head off now. I'm okay, Parker. And since when is it any of your business whether or not I...
Come on, get happy.
Oh, forget it. I didn't mean to snap at you.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Wow, something's really bugging him. He's almost acting human. So then Harry's like, my dad's a jerk. Peter's like, well, let me one-up you. Your dad may be a jerk, but my dad's dead. I'm an orphan.
I love this game. You think you have bad drama? Listen to my bad drama. I play this game all the time with people.
And earlier in the and whether or not Stan actually meant it this way or not, but it actually is kind of interesting because Harry says, we were always real pals till a few years ago. Then he started to change. I mean, this is an example of Harry being in denial, which pretty well he was in for virtually his entire life, I guess, until he quote unquote died. And then I guess things became clearer to him. But as we find out later on, he and Norman were never pals. And Harry was just kidding himself and thinking that Norman was ever a good father. So anyway,
well, not to jump the gun, but I will. But wasn't it sort of like Norman thought he was being a good father, and Harry just wished that Norman would spend time with him. But I guess it is like a conflict of interest, whether it's a difference. Like in the next issue, he talks about Norman hallucinates that he gave Harry all this stuff. So Norman thought he was a good father, and Harry just wanted to spend time with him. So I suppose it is like him denying it, but it's like different between Norman yelling at him and Norman just not being around for him.
Norman doesn't have. I mean, it demonstrates that Norman doesn't have a clue as to what it takes to be a good father, but again, maybe we're jumping the gun on that. But I just wanted to bring up the point that even though Harry says they were once pals, I mean, it's pretty apparent they never really were. Harry just so desperately wanted that to be true that he's kind of constructed this little fantasy. Mm-hmm. But we'll get into that in more detail later.
He used to use a baseball bat to beat my bike to death. He used to impregnate all my girlfriends. Now he barely impregnates any of them. And speaking of girlfriends of Harry that Norman will impregnate, Gwen is watching from the sidelines. Not
Nice.
angry at all, thinking, if Peter Parker becomes one of our crowd, it'll be just wonderful for me. And Flash Thompson, even he's getting into the come on, get happy spirits. As he thinks about Peter Parker, he's either a real weak sister or a lot more man than we ever thought he was.
Come on, get happy.
Flash uses a lot of really weird, out-of-date phrases. He calls Peter a Dutch uncle. In the last page, he says, now Harry's making with the I don't know you from Adam bit. I mean,
Now, I actually looked up Dutch uncle because I wasn't sure. So here's a scoop on Dutch uncles. Because, uncles generally have the reputation for being indulgent and permissive. Well, a Dutch uncle is the opposite, giving firm, critical advice for the sake of, educating all the youngins. It had come about with a lot of other Dutch-related insults in the wars between England and Holland in the 16th and 17th centuries. So, yeah, if you're a whore, then you're a Dutch widow. If you're well, there are others, but I won't go into them. Lots of Dutch insults out there.
sounds like
Wow.
Steve Dicker. With that.
So in other words, Flash is so dumb he doesn't even know the cliches that he's using, what they mean.
Because it doesn't really
So-
apply to Peter. Peter's not
Flash
being
is
stern.
like Biff Tannen. He's like, make like a tree and get out of here. Well, Stan Lee takes this time to assure us that we're not reading Tom Brown's School Days, which I figured from all the irony.
I looked that up too. Have you
Yeah.
ever read Tom Brown's School Days?
I haven't read it, but I have heard of it, and I know that that there's been a few movies adapted from it.
There was a 1940 movie that Stan probably saw, although I'm not sure that 1966 comic readers would have known it. But it's an 1857 novel about a boys' school in the 1830s. So that's
God's dated.
really exciting
Jeez.
stuff.
Gee. Well, we figured that it wasn't that, because of all the irony. Although, from all I know, it might have irony in there. So Spider-Man decides to swing around the city, hoping to get rid of his cold, which, when I have a cold, I don't say, maybe if I go run around in the park, my cold might go away. I think I better get to home and, get under the covers and have some orange juice. But that's why he's Peter Parker and I'm not. He sees a holdup happening on a rooftop and wonders how the crooks could be so stupid, doing a holdup in, a superhero area where superheroes will fly by and see it. So naturally, Spider-Man goes in fist a-blazing. We cut to the crowd and their reactions, and, well, we know how these crowds are, in these books. They're probably, going to talk about how Spider-Man's a murderer and a thief. It's disgraceful, all those thugs ganging up on one lone man. If only the police will get here.
Come on, get happy.
Although we do have a back and forth. Don't worry about Spider-Man, lady. According to what I read in the Bugle, he's as bad as any of them. Still, he did tackle all those hoodlums single-handedly to help us. How do we know he hasn't a more sinister reason?
What was the more
So,
sinister reason being whomped on the head?
Yeah, if this was Ditko, though, all of them would be saying, yeah, Spider-Man sucks. So at least we have two people on his side, right?
Right. So I had to confess something here. Spider-Man's talking funny through all this, like he has a cold in the nose for Christmas or something. I had forgotten that he had the cold in the nose, and so it took me to the bottom of this page to realize that it wasn't just scanning errors, that it was actually being misspelled in the copy. Yeah, so I failed.
Stan forgot too as of next issue because the cold as a plot line completely disappears, as does the spider sense not working.
Until the last page.
Gas would cure the cold, of course, because obviously Stanley would never let anything so logical go away.
No, the last page, he says that Aunt May thinks he has a cold because the fire made his temperature go up. Peter's dialogue indicates that. So yeah, Stan forgot. Yeah. Throughout the fight, Spider-Man gets the feeling that this was planned, that this is part of a bigger plot, and during the fight, Spider-Man clears a path to the elevator so that the hostages could get away, much to the disappointment of some kid, who I think this is the same kid from Amazing Fantasy 15 who was never allowed to see another horror movie again.
You mean Carnage, right?
I thought the same thing. Yes, it's Carnage.
Yeah.
I forget when did we make that joke about that being Cletus Cassidy doing that?
In a letters, in one of our letters, things that we did, someone's like, when did Carnage first appear? And I'm like, Amazing Fantasy 15. It's the kid that's not allowed to see another horror movie.
So here he is now complaining about. Now, do you think Stan is being tongue-in-cheek here about the complaints people make about cartoon violence?
No, I think it's just This is how he imagines a kid would be in this situation, and it's comic relief.
Okay. Because the mothers are like, no, 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 it's too young. You're too young for such
I
an
think that would
son."
have happened. Were the Marvel cartoons out by this time?
No, that was in September this year.
That's the only reason I think he would even care.
Spider-Man realizes two things. One, that the gang doesn't at all seem phased about the hostages being gone, which is, you'd imagine that if you were holding them up, you'd want them there. And two, he remembers Bromwell's warning and realizes that if he comes home with a big boo-boo, I might die. So he's like, oh yeah, I got to be careful when I'm fighting. The gang takes this point to announce that it's time to unleash the gas. They fire it at him, and Goblin Exposition tells us what it does. Goblin Exposition provided by the Green Goblin flying above this building with his binoculars watching. And the gas he has just inhaled will weaken all his senses, including his most potent weapon, his spider sense. Then, with his spider sense not functioning, I'll be able to humble him at will.
Stop. How does he know he has spider sense? I need this answered for me now. Like,
That's a good
I
question.
can't say it. It's about him saying, everyone knows Spider-Man is a teenager. Like, how do these fools know that?
Well, the Chameleon and Doctor Doom both knew it.
But how do they know that? Did they Skype each other and say, hey, did you know he has spider sense?
They didn't have Skype back then. They used AOL Messenger.
But
Okay.
aren't Norman Osborn and Victor Von Doom like best friends? Isn't that what we learned from Dark Reign?
Oh yeah, they're real buddies. But the thing is, Spider-Man's always been pretty careless about letting people know about his powers, because he's always, and I don't know specifically about before this particular issue, but he's always talked about, oh, my spider sense, caught you before you came up, or don't you know not to sneak up on somebody who's spider sense. So he's always kind of mouthed off about his abilities. That is until J. Michael Straczynski was writing him, and then when Tony Stark made a reference to spider sense, then Spider-Man goes all conspiratorial and, oh, I never told anybody but Aunt May and Mary Jane about my spider sense. Anyway, but now he's always kind of blabbed about having spider sense. So
That's a good point. Right.
The Goblin knows by reading the previous issues.
Yes.
that and anybody who's actually watched Spider-Man's fighting style has can pretty well tell that he's kind of got a sixth sense about him.
Well, the gang is surprised that the gas didn't finish them off, and they proclaim that the Green Goblin tricked them. They proclaim this 2 feet away from Spider-Man. As Spider-Man finishes them off and the cops arrive on the scene, Spidey swings off, wondering who those guys were working for. He wonders who they were working for a few panels after they say the Green Goblin tricked us.
They say Green Goblin specifically? Green Goon.
Well, the thug before that says, hey, the Goblin told us the gas would polish him off. And then the other guy says that Green Goon tricked us. So, kind of put it together. That kind of, it wasn't Doc Ock, so, and particularly since it's a green gas, it's, oh, well.
This is getting worse and worse for Peter. Come on now.
Now here's another thing. I mean, it's like, how many of these thugs are called Blackie? Because obviously, on page number 10, when they're talking about the gimmick, somebody's going, clam up, Blackie. I'll give him the gimmick. I mean, now. We had we had Blackie Gaxton, right? Who was a crony of Dr. Octopus's. So, obviously, most of the thugs in New York City are named Blackie. And then Stan also hasn't quite figured out how the typical New York thug is supposed to talk, because we've got one of them saying a few pages earlier, good woik boy nod, you got him. And then but I think he's the only one that talks like that. So Stan hasn't quite figured out how your typical New York goon talks yet. So anyway,
Blackie is actually a title. It's like a rank within the gang.
I see.
Lots of Blackies out there.
Level Blackie.
Dude.
Of course, nowadays that would be politically incorrect for you to say something like that. But anyway.
Yeah, this is 1966.
There's no such thing as politically incorrect.
There wasn't like a civil rights movement or anything at this time. Come on. It might or might not be worth noting that the gas that you mentioned that is green is actually white in my copy. I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah, I'm looking at the I'm looking at the reprint, during the Dark Reign era, the reprint. So it could be they've recolored it for
Okay.
because this whole thing here has been it was like it's like a remastered CD or DVD here. They've really almost recolored the thing for the
One of
Dark
those
Reign.
computerized recolorings like they did with the Ant-Man and the Wasp after Jan died.
Yeah, so it's possible that maybe they'd recolor it green.
So Peter changes, and as he's changing in an alley, he thinks, thanks to my spider sense, I don't have to worry about these quick change sessions. If anyone was watching me, I'd be aware of it.
Okay, does that count 6?
I think we're at 7 or 8 now.
23!
No one's apt to see me in here, in the shadows of this old deserted building. Wonder if I'd get kicked out of the Superheroes Union for not using a phone booth. I get it. This is Marvel, not DC. I get it.
Now, I want to say this is the first time that Spidey has made reference to changing in a phone booth as a dig on Superman. Because it is kind of a recurring gag throughout his history that he, references not changing in a phone booth. Although I've read every Superman story up through 1955, and I have yet to see Superman change in a phone booth, so I don't know where that comes from.
Well, you wouldn't see him change in the phone booth. He hides before he does it. You're not supposed to see Superman change in a phone booth.
In the comics, they show you, freak show.
I don't know what kind of voyeurism comics you're reading.
Cherry Pop-Tart. No, like in the Fleischer cartoons, doesn't he do that? Isn't that where it came from?
He goes to the storage closet in the Fleischer cartoons.
No, I'm positive I've seen at least one Fleischer cartoon where he goes into a phone booth.
Maybe he does. I've only seen most of those once, and I'm going to rewatch them again for my Golden Age Superman podcast. Plug on goldenagesuperman.libsyn.com. Woohoo! But as far as in the actual comics, the primary source material, at least what I think is primary, he doesn't change in the phone booths.
We're just baiting for a memo, aren't we?
Well, Bailey says that he's pretty weak on some of those older stuff anyway.
Yeah, he told me once that I have read more Superman than he has, which I thought was kind of insane thing.
Heresy and sacrilege.
I know, right?
That would be like somebody knowing more like Spider-Man than JR.
What I was just about to say, I've lost the last 2 out of 3 Spider-Man Jeopardies on the Spider-Man crawl space, and I have a feeling Bertoni could beat me handily. So,
well, he writes the questions.
Yeah, I write the questions. If I didn't beat you, I'd be a loser.
This is kind of funny because throughout here, when Peter is walking around and he's thinking, boy, I just feel something's around, but I know there can't be, or else my spider sense would be tingling. I mean, there's this guy in a green and purple costume on a glider. Okay. Now, it's been a long time since I've been to New York City, but from what I understand, New York City is a pretty crowded place, and people are everywhere. People are walking everywhere. And even though Peter is not noticing this silly green and purple costume guy on a glider, you would think that somebody else in New York would be saying, hey, look up there. There's a goofball in a green and purple costume on a glider.
Killing them all.
Since he's in every single panel.
Norman's killing them all. Like when they're pointing them, he's like zapping them. He's impaling them. Peter
Have you noticed that New York City is really, really empty when they want it to be? I mean, there is no alley in New York City that you can duck into and change clothes. There just isn't one.
Like in the original version, this isn't at night, is it? It's still during the day, right?
This is the end of business hours, I would guess, because he doesn't go home before he gets captured, and then Aunt May's all worried about how late he is. But he does go by the Bugle here in a couple of pages, and people are still there. So it's either at late business hours or after business hours, and Jonah's still working.
And you got to wonder, in the 1960s, were there any homeless people? Because you never see, I mean,
it's the 70s.
I mean, he just willy-nilly walks into Spider-Man just walks into any alley and doesn't expect it to get harassed or ask for money or, change or anything of that nature, He
that
just,
reminds me of, I think it was Wolverine and Spider-Man, that one shot where I think he changes in an alley and a homeless guy sees him and like he's just he really can't be bothered. He like can't worry about it, so he just like oh, don't tell anybody, and just like ends up being late to whatever was going on anyway because of that homeless guy.
Well, that's actually a very big myth about New York. It's actually very underpopulated. The population is like very small. There's very rarely any people in the streets. It's just one of those urban myths that have spun out of control.
And you were talking about the guy flying around behind him. It's a rocket-propelled glider, right?
No, for God's sake!
Wouldn't that thing make some noise?
It's like not only it's like I feel like my spider sense should be going off, but I feel like my ears should be working, but apparently they're not.
All behind you, Look up, for crying out loud.
I just like to imagine a montage of like Peter going down the street and like doing random things like going to the bank or getting the hot dog and like keep on turning around and like Norman like hides behind like different stuff the whole time.
Or like, buildings fall, like he barely misses them, but his spider sense isn't tingling, so he doesn't actually know they're happening. He doesn't dodge, he just happens to miss.
Parker's day out. He goes to like a construction building.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a lost script for the old 60s cartoon.
Well, Peeping Tom Green Goblin watches Peter change excitingly, as he'll be the first to discover Spider-Man's secret identity. Sorry, Goblin, there's at least 2 other people who have discovered it chronologically before you. And the Marvel No Prize goes out to anyone who can tell me who those 2 people are.
I only know one of them.
1000 and MJ Watson.
Yeah, your No Prize
Carl
is
King? Is that his name?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
The unseen goblin is surprised to discover that Spider-Man is just a kid.
That's the line that's repeated in Spider-Man 2. He's just a kid. Can't be any older than my son. And like they say in this panel right around the time the age of Peter in the movie is like around this time where he was only about 19 or 20.
It's incredible. He's just a kid. Can't be more than 19 or 20. I never have guessed. As Peter thinks that he should head home for Aunt May. I could have sworn I heard a rustling above me, like some big bird flying by. That somehow sounds like a rocket.
But I won't look up. Oh, no.
Why didn't my spider sense tingle? Because you just thought it was a bird? He's like, I thought I heard a bird. Why didn't my spider sense tingle? Does your spider sense usually tingle for birds?
I thought about that when I read that, and I thought maybe in some cockamamie BS way, like his spider sense is an all-purpose radar for whatever goes on in his direction. Because like, I always fall back on that 30th anniversary special where he explained to Mary Jane how his spider sense works, and basically anything that's directed towards him that could possibly perceived as a threat it registers a tingle on the spider sense. So I thought maybe that's what he meant, but hey, that's probably not what it meant.
Unless the threat is your friend, as was explained in Amazing 148. But in Amazing 149, if someone's about to have sex with you, your spider sense also goes off.
Well, that's pretty dangerous. Depends on who it is, though.
Yeah, Mary Jane had some STDs then.
STI is now the correct term for that.
Come on, Parker, get a grip on yourself. You're so used to being in trouble. Then when you're not, you'll start imagining things. Next thing I'll know, I'll start seeing goofy costume supervillains who aren't there.
Oh.
Come on, get happy.
Wait.
No, come on, get smart. Come on, man. Peter flashbacks to the gunman incident of issue 37, where he saw a gun through a high window that was high for no reason, about to shoot Professor Strom, but when he got to the window, no one was there.
Did shoot Professor Strom, but he got a heart attack. We talked about that.
Yeah, it shot heart attack juice at him. So he worries about his spider sense, and angst walks all the way to the Daily Bugle, with the Green Goblin sneaking above him unseen to Peter and everyone else via glider, where Peter runs into Ned Leeds, and, well, like before, we know it's on now, I mean, last time these 2 spoke, they were yelling at each other, they were shoving, they were shouting. Hello there, Parker. I didn't know you were here. Nuts, and he wouldn't have known if I could help it. I was just trying to get some info on Betty's whereabouts, but no luck yet. I want to tell you something, fella. I'm sorry I snapped at you the other day.
Irony. Oh, wait.
Again.
What?
Come on, get happy.
It's just that I was upset about Betty's disappearance. Bertoni footnote. Why? I had no call to fly off the handle at you. First Harry Osborn and now him. Next Jameson himself will probably blow me a kiss. Parker, get in here. I have something for you. No, that didn't happen. No. Forget it. I guess the whole thing's just as much my fault as yours. I hope you do find her, Ned. And when you do, you don't have to worry about me. As of now, Peter Parker is out of the race. You're on your own. I'll never understand what came between you and Betty Brant, Pete, but I appreciate you letting me know where you stand.
Do y'all have, like, blush marks or something on Peter Parker's cheek in that first panel on the second row?
No.
First panel, second row.
Is there any little marks on his cheek?
Oh, yeah, kind of.
Just wonder why he's blushing. But if they're not there in Donovan's, that probably was just a mark on
Coloring.
the page that shouldn't be there. Never mind.
Yeah, so everybody's happy, even Ned Leeds. Parker, is that you? I want to see you. Uh-oh, it's Laughing Boy Jameson, the little Mary Sunshine of the publishing world. All right, now, I'm wise to Stan's game now. Gwen was nice. Unnamed ESU boy was nice. Harry was nice. Ned Leeds is nice. So Jameson, let's see what he has to say. How many times do I have to tell you this is a newspaper office, not a campus hangout? If you haven't any photos for me, get lost.
Nico, he's not.
Nice.
Okay, we have some consistency.
And then they play Let's Catch Up the New Readers and how this whole thing works.
Yeah. So Jonah didn't get the come on, get happy notice. Peter and Jonah have a back and forth regarding money in the pictures. Peter even threatens to take them to Daily Globe, but eventually Peter gives Jonah the pictures, and Jonah gives Peter a check for half their work. The Goblin, thanks to a shotgun mic, now knows Peter's name. He follows him home and then reveals himself once Peter arrives at the Parker house. And
Okay, now I got to step back here a little bit before. I remember when I was talking about his little purple purse and how he had these two huge pumpkin bombs, and how in the world was he going to fit those in his little purple purse? Now he's pulling out what looks like almost like a mini, like he's almost ready for a jousting tournament. You know, he's got this shotgun mic, and it's like, okay, now where did that come from?
Look at this.
Where is he hiding all of this stuff? You know, so particularly this is something that was like really sharp. I mean, so he couldn't have had it crammed down his pants or anything, and I just don't know.
why do you think he's so unpleasant?
Anyway,
One word, pearls.
Now we return you back to Bertoni's regular narration. So,
Well, actually, yes, I was going to read the dialogue for Osborn revealing himself to Peter in front of the house, but if I can have the Goblin performer himself do it, I would be ever so honored.
The Green Goblin, you found me.
oh man, I was about to say I won't do the Goblin revealing himself because I'd get arrested, but I can't have him, showing him. There's no way I can make that sound good, is there? Oh,
Hey, we'll go rage here.
all right. Let's see here. See. No need to go inside, Parker. I'll just have to go after you and drag you out again.
That voice, then there was someone I'd recognize it anywhere. The Green Goblin. You found me.
Correct, Parker. Your web-slinging masquerade is finally finished, and so are you, Spider-Man.
Peter tries to strike, but realizes that he has none of his equipment on. So the Goblin quickly overwhelms him with gas from the glider.
I really like the panel where he's doing the web shooting without the web shooters there. It's a Spider-Man pose, but it's Peter Parker, and you get a facial expression which you never get because of the Spider-Man mask. It's just a cool little piece of art there.
I'll go into it later, but I love this fight sequence. And actually, another note, I can literally hear Christopher Daniel Barnes saying, "I don't have my web shooters."
Yeah, because they did that in the '90s show. That they almost adapted this fight shot for shot, complete with the "I don't have my web shooters on."
Oh yes.
So inside the window, Aunt May thinks, "Is it merely my imagination, or do I keep hearing the strangest sounds out there? I'd better have a look through the window. Oh dear, I can't see a thing. There's some sort of dense fog outside." What kind of fog does New York usually get? Because that's not that. I would think that the Watson or the Abbott house was on fire if I saw that.
Yeah, that's not fog, dear. That's smoke. Have you noticed how young Aunt May has gotten?
Romita!
Well, while she was getting that last operation done, they did a little nip tuck.
They're going to get letters about this. Romita's going to have to age her back up again.
But that's most peculiar. It was a clear spring night just a few minutes ago. Where on earth could this fog have come from? Poor Peter, out there alone on such a dark, fog-shrouded evening. I do wish he were home. He's a frail young man. Irony counts.
Yeah, but if it's Aunt May, then it's already, anything she say is going to be full of irony.
But at that very second, May Parker's frail young man prepares to give a good account of himself against the deadly Green Goblin. Peter does his best to dodge the Green Goblin's attacks, but he slowly gets worn down as the Goblin finishes Peter off with one of his ghost bombs, those little things that he threw at the Human Torch in issue 17 that use
Here's a message, little man. Try to catch it if you can.
Oh my god.
What's that?
Peter is unconscious and gets tied up with a steel cable and flown, as famously depicted on the cover, to the Green Goblin's waterfront hideout. Peter
You are
strapped to the
probably
tube.
wondering what fate I have in store for you. Well, rest assured it will be one you deserve.
I've got to stall for time somehow. You might as well finish me off right now, because if you delay, I'll end up beating you, as I did in the past.
You never beat me. Those were just accidents. Do you hear? Accidents. Yeah, kind of like when the dog crapped on the carpet and things like that. That kind of accident. You can't rush me now. You'll never escape.
It's working. His insane pride won't let him do what I suggested.
And now, before you meet your end, I've one final surprise in store for you.
Oh god, that's it. Keep talking, bragging, ranting, anything, just as long as I have a little while to strain against these coils.
Since you'll never live to betray me to another soul, it's only fitting that you learn the identity of the one who has beaten you.
It almost sounds like Ricardo Montalban later in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
But first, I wanted you to know who it was who had beaten you. Anyway, and so, at long last, the Green Goblin will introduce himself. Take a look, Parker. A good, long look. It's the last face Spider-Man will ever see. It's the real face of the Green Goblin. The face of Norman Osborn.
Those features! That name! Of course! Even though you were just introduced 2 issues ago, you're related to my own classmate. You're Harry Osborn's father.
Well, of course he has to be with that tacky haircut. I mean, the Osborn hair is rather unique. Nobody else besides an Osborn well, no, wait a minute. The Sandman does. The Sandman does have Osborn hair.
Well, nobody else is
Sandman.
born with
Of
Tootsie
course
Rolls on their
it's
head.
you. Sandman, I should have known.
You know, it's kind of funny because we were going back to the Ned Leeds part, and I know that you guys your last podcast you did a guy named Joe. I think that was that issue number 38. I
Yeah.
believe of Amazing, and where Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man sees this stupid mannequin where it says reminds him of Ned Leeds. When I was going through these old issues, I had thought that this was part of my speculation that Ditko had originally intended Ned Leeds to be the Green Goblin, because there was an essay I had read years ago that speculated that, but as I was reading this, it just seemed like something was really, really building between Ned and Peter, because Peter was just getting angrier and angrier all the time, to now where he's thinking that stupid wax dummies look like Ned Leeds, and he starts punching them out. And I thought that this was going to be some big reveal, that Ditko originally had planned Ned Leeds to be the Green Goblin, but I guess as Ditko has later claimed, it was always intended to be Osborn. So, another brilliant theory bites the dust. So.
That was the thing, though. But do you think that Stanley ever, because there's that rumor, was there any like clues that where people saw that said, oh, well, this means that it's the Goblin's Ned Leeds, or was it just like a guess that it'll turn out to be him? Were there anything that like any evidence to back up people's ideas that it could be Ned?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. This was something I read in apparently there was a comic book store, a large comic book store in New York called it wasn't Fantagraphics, because that's something else, but they published it's called Fanta Chronicles, and they published like a magazine about a superhero every month, and one month was Spider-Man. And it was almost like the precursor of Spidey Kicks Butt. It was these different people writing essays on Spider-Man, and someone was speculating that it had to be Leeds that was the Green Goblin. So, as I read through all these issues, just because the way Ned kept popping up, and he was obviously a romantic rival for Betty's affections, and but I don't think there ever was any real, when you go back and look at the in fact, there really weren't any clues at all of who the Green Goblin was. There was never any real, as far as I remember, there was never any real kind of foreshadowing over who it had to be, particularly since Norman had been only, as by name, had only been introduced a couple issues before, and then he appeared in a couple of panels. But no, I don't think there was any. It just was nice speculation. It also probably was partially fed by the myth that Stan and Steve had this argument about the Goblin's identity. So.
Well, looking back on these issues and just the way we've approached them with the unnamed Norman Osborn appearances and watching how the story flowed, it seems to me organic enough that I'm kind of surprised all the controversy has arisen around it over the decades. That I would think that once Norman Osborn was revealed as the Green Goblin, people would go back and check their last 2 years of back issues and like, oh wow, look at all the things he's done over the putting him in the scenes and everything. That's really, really cool. Instead of, that couldn't possibly be the way it was originally planned.
Yeah, and that makes me think of like people like get to the last page and like, wait, what? And they just like throw the comic across the room. The new character that was introduced like mere months ago. Forget that.
That would have surprised me. I mean, because really, other than when he appeared in 37, he had a person that looked like him had appeared in like what 2 panels way back in issue number 22 or 23, and then there was something more recent where he was putting an ad in the Bugle, and that was it really. I mean, it wasn't like there was any build up to. I mean, it wasn't really like the character of Norman Osborn had actually been identified for the last couple of years. In fact, Harry himself had only been around since issue 31. So, but Ditko claimed in an interview that he had introduced the Goblin earlier, and then he later introduced his son. So, I mean, that can only be one person that he had in mind. So,
right.
I wonder if people looked at those country club scenes and like thought that the Sandman was like disguising himself.
Well, he doesn't have the same like a flat top rock head. Like Osborn's head is shaped differently than Sandman, but they had like this. But as we all know, they're cousins. Isn't that right, John Byrne? Wink.
Well, this was an amazing issue, and thank you, Josh, for bringing the recap on it.
Yay.
I would say, what do we think about it? But that's kind of redundant because we've been praising it and lauding it this entire time.
The best issue since 33, in my opinion.
I'll buy that.
I think we praise it because of its historical significance, more so than the real quality. Because when you think about it, I mean, these 2 issues, particularly number 40, more so than number 39. I mean, Stan's dialogue is just really lame. I mean, it's very lame. It's very cliched. All the supervillain monologuing, Peter's just relentless angst over what if Aunt May sees, what if Aunt May finds out, oh, I can't give Aunt May any shocks, and then Aunt May's her own bitty frantic and worrying and stuff. I mean, real people don't talk like this, they don't think like this, they don't act like this. So it's looking back on it, we look at this issue fondly because of its historical significance with the Goblin, the revelation of the Goblin's identity, and also being the first issue drawn by John Romita Jr. I think that we look at that and we kind of forget the actual somewhat mediocrity.
I would actually disagree because correct me if I'm wrong. Is this not the first time in comics history that a supervillain has found out the hero's secret identity and attacked him in his home? Because I think that is like really, really, really cool. Even like today, like the idea that they're fighting in front of his front lawn, and Peter he doesn't have his equipment, he doesn't have his costume fully on, and he's completely unawares and taken off guard and loses the fight immediately because of it. I honestly think that's like genuinely quality stuff.
I have to wonder if Stan Lee was so, what's the word, verbose. There's another word I learned recently for verbose, but I don't know what it is anymore. I wonder if Stan Lee is so verbose in this just because he's so excited from getting the pages from John Romita. Like it's, come on, get happy was also in Stan Lee's head. It's just like, oh, wow, I took a chance on changing my Spider-Man artist, and I'm getting these pages in, and they're beautiful, and everybody has to say something in every single panel now.
Exactly.
No, that was just Stan being Stan.
Yeah, but he has not been that much of a wordy writer in the last few issues, I don't think.
Okay.
But maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong at least once before in here.
I think Stan was always kind of a verbose writer, but then again, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm making the mistake now. I'm being somewhat smug and arrogant as I'm judging a mid to late 1960s comic by 21st century standards. So probably I need to take a deep breath and rethink what I just said about mediocrity and silliness, because I mean you can't take the story out of the era in which it was written.
Right.
And as Don as Don brings up, whether or not this was the first time this type of thing happened, it really probably was pretty damned exciting. One of Spider-Man's villains basically shows up at his house. I mean, now it's old hat, but back then it probably was something very unique and very startling and quite cool. So
Yeah, I just really love the way it's done. And before I just stop the podcast dead with going on about the art, I just love certain stuff. Like Peter, he puts up a fight. It's not like he's like John said earlier, the cold kind of goes away. It's not like he's like, oh, I can't fight him because I have the cold. He tries to fight him. There's that one part where at the last panel of page 17, Romita draws him acrobatically dodging the Bob's blast, and he manages to smack away the batarang at the last second and makes one final leap towards the goblin. He makes one final leap towards the goblin and is caught off guard by all the goblin's techniques and abilities. I think it's a very reasonable fight. Peter, I mean, he's still Spider-Man. He still has all of his strength, so he's not totally outmatched. He's just completely taken aback and caught off guard, and that's what really loses the fight, because this is the most dangerous, shocking thing that's ever happened to him in his life. And I think it was really well written. Irony or no. Yeah.
We do realize just how much Peter depends upon his web shooters. I think if Mr. Miyagi were to come along right now, he would give Peter some hard lessons and not, leaning on those things so much and getting more skilled in his other abilities. But once you take away his web shooters, all of his long-distance stuff goes away. He has to get close quarters to be any good, and he can't do that with the Green Goblin.
I've always wanted to see Spider-Man kind of when he's without his web shooters or out of webbing, just to run up to a guy, because he's 15 times faster than a normal person. He can just run up and not super speed, but just kind of blitz him and just knock him out before the guy has time to react.
Right.
He doesn't have his spider sense, and I think that he relies a lot on that too, like when the dodge punches and when the make sudden movements. So I think that was also crippling him during the fight.
Yeah, and he's not entirely focused on the fight either. He's in the back of his mind, he's always worrying about what happens if Aunt May looks out the window and sees this fight going on. So he's not entirely focused on bringing Norman down as much as he is trying to, how do I beat him, but also how do I hide what the heck I'm doing. So his focus is kind of split as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things, and again, as you mentioned too, just the sheer surprise. I mean, this lunatic shows up on his front yard, and that's probably quite a shock, and it takes him some time. I mean, in all the months or years or however long continuity this has been, no one has ever done this to him. So it's got to be and then he's wondering. He's also probably wondering in the back of his mind, how did he find out? How did he find out? How did he find out? And so
Exactly.
probably he's going through mentally, So he's got a whole bunch of different things going on, rather than just focusing on fighting. Whereas Norman's obviously got Norman doesn't give a rat's ass what's going on around him. He's got him exactly where he wants him, and can bring everything to bear against. Although he does pull another one he pulls his flying bat. It's like, oh boy, here's another thing that he pulls out of his purple purse.
His extra small purple purse.
Yeah. So.
It's definitely not a purple plastic purse because it can't expand. But I'm pretty sure that he has some Mary Poppins powers going on there, like Josh said earlier.
Whatever.
Spoonful of sugar. Flash Thompson's wearing black. Ooh, foreshadowing.
Because, spoiler, guess who's the new Venom, guys and gals?
And we have on the Spider-Man Crawl Space episode me asking Dan Slott, is Flash Thompson the new Venom? And Dan Slott changing the subject.
So Venom is nice to Spider-Man in this story.
Yeah, because Gwen told him to be. Gwen said Venom be nice to Spider-Man.
Venom, we decided we were going to be nice to Spider-Man this time. Oh,
everybody's nice. Except for John.
That's why we're playing music the entire time.
Yeah. They all got the just everyone's a little bulkier and less angsty. Even Aunt May got younger.
Move on to the art now. Everybody's kind of more filled out. I mean, Peter, was there were times where Ditko did draw Peter very athletically, and you saw some thick muscle on him. But right here, like his face is a lot fuller, without looking overweight or anything, and his hair seems a little shorter just by the shape of his head. And the art is a lot. The way Romita is, his art is always like crystal clear, so you can kind of see better rendering on people like Ned Leeds and Aunt May. You kind of recognize, or maybe that's just because like the panels are bigger. Like he doesn't do the 9-panel grids that Ditko would routinely do.
Right.
Romita's a lot more of a just by the nature of his past career, he's a lot more of a cinematic storyteller in terms of like kind of garnering emotion, where Ditko was very clinical and did a lot of like he wouldn't really care about too much about the art. By that I mean he wouldn't really gleam upon more than was absolutely necessary. I don't think. Where a lot of times you kind of have zoom ups on people's faces, really, and Ditko did do that, but here there was dialogue. There's less dialogue with Romita than I think there was with Ditko.
And it's going to get less as we go on. Romita's going to get to where he puts 4 panels on most pages. And reading a Spider-Man comic is going to become a 5-minute job, even in 1967, 68, a lot like it is now, just because there's so few panels on the page.
If you compare this Spider-Man to the one that was in Daredevil when Romita drew him there, I think he's a lot better. What do you guys think? Because I think John had some complaints back then.
I think he improved over the course of those 2 issues. He was kind of rough in some of the opening action. Like there was a TV news report about Spider-Man taking out the Master Planners gang. No, the Mass Marauders gang. And that wasn't very smooth. But I think that over the course of those 2 issues, he improved enough that his covers look really good.
Yeah. I think that the web pattern is a lot wider and less. There's less webs on it. There's one shot in the Rhino issue where like he has a ton of webs on it, but that's only like one. Right now, you can sort of tell with Spider-Man and Peter, he's trying to Ditko because he has said as much. But I think in about 3 or 4 issues, he really does get into his own Romita groove that we all love, and you can hear it. Especially in the next issue, it looks a little different.
Right.
There's another instance where the villain kind of bigs up Spider-Man is when Peter's like temporarily knocked out by Goblin's goblin gas made of goblin gas. He says
goblins.
Most people would be completely unconscious, perhaps even near death. But Parker is merely stunned. His spider strength is everything they say it is. So like, I just love when because that's done for exposition's sake, and not really for a villain's observation. And he would probably be like, "Drat, he's only stunned," but he says, "Wow, isn't he awesome?" I just found that funny. And my last thing before I shut up because I've been talking way too much.
No, it's fine.
You're fine.
He doesn't have his web shooters here. Doesn't he web away at the end of the next issue?
Maybe they're like under his costume somewhere, like he's not wearing them, but like they're in like a belt compartment that he could put on.
I got the impression that they were just wherever they go when he's not being Spidey. In his pocket or whatever it is, he just doesn't have them on his wrists. But whenever he suits up later, he can pull them out of whatever that place is, like the pocket in his cape, maybe, and put them on.
I think in the '90s show when they did this, and he was being dragged away by the Green Goblin, he literally takes his web shooter out of his pocket. I thought it was kind of cool. But yeah, if you had him on like during the day, you would see like the trigger on his palm, so that wouldn't work.
Right.
Well, they did that in at the end of One More Day when like everyone's raising their glasses, like you can see up Peter's sleeve that he's wearing his web shooters.
Oh, really? That's kind of nice, actually. I think I like that.
That was how fans realized that the web shooters were back and that the organic webbing was gone.
Cool.
Just literal.
Yes, that is just what people thought at the end of One More Day when they closed that last page. Cool.
Well, yeah, but I like the web shooters, but maybe that is just my opinion. On page 6, Gwen is all inner monologuing about Peter's awesomeness. And I think she's been daydreaming about this boy just a little bit too much. I know that guys are sometimes like that. If the hot chick would just come and be part of my crowd, that would be so awesome. But here she's doing the same thing.
Gwen is wondering if the hot chick will come over to our crowd. Or we just
Well, you know, swap the genders out. Although, you know, maybe she likes that.
Well, according to fanfic, never mind.
No.
Josh has vetoed the fanfic. The middle panel of page 6 gets the prize for cutest panel ever. It's this little itty bitty teeny tiny panel right in the middle of the page. It's very cute.
Also, you think that we talked about how this is sort of like a quasi, not reboot, but sort of like volume 2 of Amazing Spider-Man. This is kind of like an introductory because you're introduced to all the supporting characters: Aunt May, Daily Bugle, his love life, his classmates, the way he takes out bad guys, his abilities, his spider sense, his web slinging. It is kind of like if you've not seen Spider-Man before, well, Bucko, you're in for it now, kind of thing.
I get the feeling that Stan was expecting a big following of Romita to come over to the book, maybe from Daredevil or maybe from his romance stuff, or maybe just now that Steve Ditko is leaving, people were going to try it out. He had made lots of announcements in the bullpen bulletins and stuff, so if you were reading other Marvel comics and there was a change in the order, then you might want to come check it out. So he does do a lot to reacquaint readers and bring new readers up to speed with how the Spidey Marvel universe works.
It's funny because I remember in that Ditko documentary, both Romita says that both he and Stan really thought the book was going to die the second Ditko left.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That there was a lot of people that thought that without Ditko, this book was going to go to the pooper.
And maybe that was even more reason why he was trying to, if you did come and check it out, bring it up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be curious to see what the letters are like in an episode or two whenever these issues hit the stands and people are writing in about their opinions on them, because I really don't remember. I do read most letters columns whenever I read a comic book, but I don't remember what these are as we go through them. So it'll be interesting to see. So this was definitely one of our favorite issues so far, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to ask JR, how would you rank this among your collection of Goblin stories? Like, do you look back at this, or is it just like this kind of one where you just look at it for the history?
Well, I remember when I was came up with something called like the Essential Spider-Man, or the Indispensable Spider-Man. This two-part tale was definitely on it. I mean, it's clearly one of the most important Goblin stories. You'd probably have to but is it one of the best? I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the ones I'm partial to. Peter Parker 75, Citizen Osborn, Death in the Family. I'm not sure it would be in the top. I'm not sure this would be in the top 5 Goblin stories. I actually, the Spectacular number 2 / annual number 9. Actually, I like that story better than this one. It's obviously one of the most significant and one of the most important. I don't know that I would call it one of the best Goblin stories. I probably wouldn't put it in my top 5.
Yeah, that's true. There are much better ones that just play off of Peter's fear that, oh crap, that guy's back again. He's going to tell everybody I'm Spider-Man. So that did lay groundwork for some even better stories. I will admit that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and two, Norman wasn't really developed as a character at this time either. So, in the later stories where he's been more developed as a character, and you kind of, and he's not just this. He's kind of a black and white bad guy here in Stan's renderings. He doesn't have a whole lot of depth quite yet, so he's still somewhat of a simplistic character. But I mean, again, it's what, 1966, 1967 when this was written, so it was pretty good for the time.
It's true.
So, looking at some of the things that happened in this book, aside from the story, we had our house ad for the issue, which featured 3 more Marvel masterpieces. Those were Fantastic Four number 53, where we get some background on the Black Panther and the man who would become Claw, who is much more sinister in this story than he is in Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, where I found him very laughable. There's also Thor 130, which I honestly haven't read, but it involves Hercules and Pluto, so I'm wondering if this is when Hercules makes the deal with Pluto to stay in his place in the underworld.
What did Mickey have to say about that, though?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm pretty sure that Minnie was pretty attached to that dog, so I could go somewhere with that, but I'm not going to. In fact, I was recently reading, there's a blog that I have mentioned on our Facebook page, but if you don't follow that, over at marvelgenesis.com, Don Alsafi has been going through every Marvel superhero book from Fantastic Four number 1 moving forward and just making short blog posts about them. It's not a recap and commentary thing, but just, half a dozen or fewer points about the book that he thought were interesting, and there are panel scans and such things. So those are definitely worth checking out if you have time to go over to marvelgenesis.com. And he has recently gotten to the beginning of the Lee and Kirby run on Thor, and everyone's bragging about the awesomeness that I think I'm just going to have to go and pull some Thor out, even though I've never really read it regularly. And finally, we have Marvel Collector's Item Classics 4, which had reprints from the Fantastic Four, Iron Man from Tales of Suspense, Doctor Strange from Strange Tales, and the original run of the Incredible Hulk. So those were our ads for this month. The Marvel Bullpen Bulletins page brings us items of lasting insignificance from the four corners of Marveldom. There is a bulletin celebrating Romita's new role on Spider-Man, but bigger than that is the item right below it. Here it is, what you've been waiting for. Our first advance info on the great king-size annuals we'll be publishing this summer. Although our plans are still subject to change, it looks as though we'll be featuring 6 terrific titles for you, with 2 going on sale in June, 2 in July, and the final 2 in August. These 6 mags are Millie the Model Annual. We know that's going to break all you superhero fans up. And Sergeant Fury, both on sale in June. Then the Mighty Thor and Marvel Superheroes on sale in July, followed by the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man on sale in August. We can hear you muttering now, Marvel Superheroes? What in the name of Aunt Petunia is that? Well, you know how we love surprises, so just consider it our big surprise for 66, and we'll tell you more about it next ish, okay? We will be talking about the 3rd Amazing Spider-Man Annual in our next episode, so be looking forward to that.
Hope you're an Avengers fan. If you're not, just skip the episode.
But it is a much better Spidey Avengers story than his guest spot in the Avengers number 11.
He's not a robot this time.
He's not a robot this time. And he doesn't make giant web wings with which he soars across the Mexican plains.
Too bad.
Too bad. He really should have done so. And in the ongoing saga of Marvel vs. Brand X, we have Bulletin. Remember last ish when we asked you if you wanted us to continue wrapping Brand X on the knuckles for swiping everything in our mags except the copyright? Well, all the mail isn't in yet. But while we're waiting for your verdict, we thought we'd quote this little verse which rascally Roy Thomas brought to our attention. It's by William Butler Yeats, and was written half a century ago, although it might have been written today. Here it is. To a poet who would have me praise certain bad poets, imitators of his and mine. You say, as I have often given tongue, in praise of what another's said or sung, 'twere politic to do the like by these, but was there ever a dog that praised his fleas? We somehow feel that Willie Yates said it a lot better than we could have. So to me, that's just mean, but that's okay. We do have the usual page advertising Marvel clothing and paraphernalia, including a brand spanking new sweatshirt featuring the ever-loving blue-eyed Benjamin J. Grimm in all his natural beauty. And in the Spider's Web, response to the Molten Man Regrets in issue 35 was pretty much positive.
What?
Which doesn't really agree with us at all, as Donovan's little squeal just showed. I guess they're allowed to be wrong, since they, were in the 60s and didn't know any better. We did have Mrs. Melanie Skinner, who happened across an issue of Spider-Man while cleaning up around the neighborhood, and she took an instant liking. She's on base in Alaska and sent money for a subscription, and they sent her the latest issue to tie her over until the subscription could get processed. So pretty cool with, moms reading comics. John Cahill, or Kale, or something, of Pembroke, Massachusetts, asks people to stop sending death wishes on kind, loving, sacrificing Aunt May.
No.
And Ann Kong is a student in Trinidad in the West Indies, and she complains that she'll take her comics to school to read between classes, but then her English teacher will see them, confiscate them, read them, and pass them around the faculty for them to read before returning them to her.
Stan wrote that.
She also wants to be an artist and laments that so many girls in comics are, as she says, downright homely. To which Stan replies that Ring-a-Ding Romita is in the process of changing that, beginning with this very issue. And on that note, we are going to take a little break and come back with issue number 40.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Presenting the Amazing Spider-Man Classics Podcast, Year 2. Starring myself, John Wilson, along with Joshua Bertoni, Donovan Grant, and your favorite guest hosts of the comics podcasting community, bringing you the classic 1960s adventures of Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, and the gang, as told by Stan Lee, John Romita, Don Heck, Jim Mooney, John Buscema, and more. And to kick the year off, we're running a special episode in March with... hold on, wait a second.
Hey there, webheads! 12 months ago, a very special podcast came onto your iTunes feed, and to celebrate 12 months of that podcast being on your iTunes feed, we thought we'd take you on a special date to the movies, and what a movie it is! Why, it's about our very own webhead spin of Spider-Man, the first installment of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, guest starring one of the Power Rangers. Oh boy, we're in for a good time, so strap yourself in, and here's the hosts. This isn't a way a podcast is supposed to work. Peter, you're seeing the Spider-Man Sam Raimi movie without me? Why, no, Betty. I'm seeing it with all my friends, the Amazing Spider-Man Classics listeners, and you're invited too. Even Liz Allen? Yes, Betty, even Liz Allen. Okay, as long as Ned can come. You know why I hate you, Leeds? Because you have a right to listen to this episode with Betty. The shadow of Spider-Man isn't standing between your earphones.
Episode 28 kicks off the new year with an in-film commentary on the 2002 Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. And then we continue on in future episodes looking at the further adventures of Spider-Man, an Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and every guest appearance and cameo we can find. Only at Amazing Spider-Man Classics, found on iTunes and at amazingspiderman.libsyn.com. Next up, we have Amazing Spider-Man 40, cover dated September 1966, but released on June 9th. The cover was drawn by John Romita and inked by Mike Esposito. The image is Spider-Man standing fierce and triumphant over a prostrate Green Goblin while flames blaze in the background, and his glider lies wrecked on the floor. Oh, sorry, his broomstick lies wrecked on the floor.
Oh, of course.
The captions read...
How will he clean his house now?
The captions read, Spidey saves the day, and the end of the Green Goblin.
He doesn't save the day. He saves his own ass.
Which is
Yes.
the day, as we all know.
The world doesn't revolve around him. Just the book.
Am I alone? I kind of wished they hadn't telegraphed on the cover how this was going to go. I wouldn't mind retaining the illusion just a little bit longer that Spider-Man's actually in real jeopardy here. Having Spider-Man saves the day, we already knew that was the title from the last issue's next issue box. But the end of the Green Goblin and him prostrate on the floor, I felt like, kind of like the second part of the Master Planner story where it was immediately revealed that it was the Dr. Octopus. It was kind of like a little bit of letting the cat out of the bag a little bit too quickly.
Yeah, it looks like Spider-Man did like curb stomp him, so I guess we want to know. In what manner does Spider-Man murder the Green Goblin? Find out, true believers.
Well, actually, if you, I was just looking through this Dark Reign reprint where it actually has the covers of the two issues 39 and 40 on opposite pages. It actually kind of makes a nice bookend. Whether this was intended or not, probably not. But in issue number 39, the Green Goblin, it clearly appears to be triumphant because he's got an unmasked Spider-Man helpless and tied up before him. And then issue number 40, the roles are reversed where Spider-Man is, standing triumphant and the Goblin's, is hugging the pavement. So it actually kind of, put together, it actually kind of makes a nice bookend. But I see your point where it's like, but then again, don't you always know the hero is going to kind of win, at least in the 1960s, the hero.
I'm surprised every single time.
Well, like I said, it's kind of like maintaining the illusion. We know he's going to win. We know it's all going to come out okay in the end. We don't know that it's going to come out okay in the end of this issue.
Right, but there's still the question of, after he's defeated, how is he going to convince Norman not to blow his secret to the whole wide world? Because there's no psychic mind block as of now.
Right. And there
We don't
are...
have to worry about that for several decades.
Right.
He goes to Doctor Strange and Iron Man and Reed Richards and says, pretty please.
And I didn't understand early on in the post One More Day world that the psychic mind block wasn't retroactive. So I thought they were overwriting this story, but that's not true. This story really did happen in all of its, fictitious merit.
They don't explain that in the comics. Like you have to Joe Quesada had to come out and say that outside of the comics.
Right.
Norman remembers going to Peter Parker's house. He just doesn't quite remember what numbers were on the door.
We didn't actually go to the house. They were on the street.
Right, he just doesn't remember what street sign it was.
He remembers hearing his name from the shotgun mic, but he just can't remember the exact pronunciation. He's like, that guy's Spider-Man.
There's something about Peter Parker that strikes a chord in my brain. If only I could remember what it was.
God.
It's the best writing ever. So we opened up to an ad for U.S. government surplus, parachutes, boats, jackets, and other random crap. But what we really care about is the splash page. Peter Parker is in his Spider-Man costume, though without his mask. But over that are tatters of his clothing that he wore that day, and it actually kind of looks like he might have hulked out recently. But the title is again emblazoned across the page, Spidey Saves the Day, featuring The End of the Green Goblin, which is in much bigger letters than the actual title. There's a recap box for all those who missed the last issue because they were orbiting Earth on a spaceship, and our credits read, Conceived in fantasy, and dedicated to the proposition that all Marvelites are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of comic book quality. So say we all. Stan Lee, writer, John Romita, penciler, Mickey DeMeo, inker, unless you pronounce it Mike Esposito, and Sam Rosen, letterer.
What happened to Artie Simek? Did he get fired for this?
I think Artie Simek and Sam Rosen trade out a lot of issues. I don't think that either one has been very steady on this book. I guess we had more Artie Simek, though, because I always wonder how I'm going to pronounce his name when I say it. In the opening dialogue, Peter mentions Harry, and that gives Norman pause for a moment. And while he mutters, we learn that Harry has no idea his father is a costume supervillain. Peter continues to goad Norman with mentions of Harry, and Norman decides that an origin story is in order, which makes Peter happy because he can spend the time working at the cables binding him. The steel cables that he's going to somehow bend his way out of.
This is something I always found interesting was as kind of on page 2 as you're reading here, and Norman is starting to he's kind of starting to lose it. He's starting to break down and kind of, I guess, apparently even starting to have some regrets. And Peter's thinking, he's a real mental case. My only chance is to keep taunting him, but I've got to be careful. One wrong word could make him violent, and then bye-bye Spidey. So what does Peter do when he senses that Norman's starting to become vulnerable? He says, I've got to be careful because I don't want to make him violent. What's the very next words right out of Peter's mouth? Big deal. Who cares why you became the Green Goblin? You probably lost an election bet or something. What does it matter? So yeah, that's real subtle, Pete. There we go. That's really taking advantage of the situation and exploiting the guy's vulnerability, and also worrying about saying something that'll make him violent. So, once again, Peter shows how sometimes he's just not very smart when it comes to dealing with supervillains. So,
well, I like Osborn because Peter's like, big deal. What does it matter? You fool! I'll show you what it matters.
I'll make you listen, then you'll understand.
And then it's like you might as well, cue the monologuing, and then here we go. So,
right, do the little time travel music and make everything get wavy.
Monologuing.
But the way that they tell the origin story here is kind of interesting. The captions give us Norman's words describing how he views the past through his, I would say rose-colored glasses, but they're probably green.
No, through his flat. Oh wait, never mind. That's later on.
But the dialogue in the scenes show us what really happened and how Norm isn't half the father he thinks he was. We find out that Harry's mom had died when Harry was a baby, which I think is conflicted in later stories. Is that right, Josh?
The when she dies is conflicted various times. In the Child Within story, you see Harry looking through a photo album, and his mother is alive, like almost to his toddler or kindergarten years.
But in the Revenge of the Green Goblin, she died in childbirth.
Yeah.
In childbirth?
Like she gives birth to Harry and dies.
She gave birth to Harry. Harry aged a few years, and then she died.
And J.M. DeMatteis's or DeMathis's take on the story, I think in Spectacular Annual number 14, I think, implies that Harry's actually, around 6 to 8 years old when she dies. But it's you can kind of stitch it to mean just about anything you want to mean. I mean it, she could have become gravely ill and just lingered for a long time after she gave birth. It's not too significant when she died. I mean, obviously, whether Harry was a baby or whether Harry was, fairly young. I mean, her health could have been seriously compromised by giving birth, and she just lingered for a while. I mean, that still would have been sufficient for Norman to blame Harry for, like he did for costing his mother her life. So, but yeah, it is kind of murky, but it's not that important ultimately.
In any case, Harry does grow up not getting any attention from a mother, and not enough attention from his father. But Norman tries to make up for it with toys. He even buys Harry a shiny new bicycle once, and we find out in a story published last year that Harry was riding the bike one day when some bullies stole it from him. He told his dad, hoping for his dad to help, and his dad went. He got the bike back from the bullies, and they took the bike home, and Harry was all happy that his dad had helped him, until his dad bashed the bike to pieces with a crowbar.
Waka waka waka.
Which was awesome. Well, I say it was awesome. I thought it was awesome. What did y'all think of that story?
That was rather douchey of him.
I was hoping Norman would bash the bullies with the baseball bat or the crowbar or whatever he had. I was when he grabbed the kid and pulled him off the bike, and the kid is just scared, shits his pants because he thinks Norman's going to beat the crap out of him, and then Norman proceeds to bash the bike. I was kind of hoping Norman would get in a lick at the bullies, but he didn't. So.
And that bike later became Mendel Strom and vowed revenge on Norman Osborn for years to come.
Wow. Well, we do learn that Professor Strom from issue 37 was Norman's partner, and that Norman threw him under the bus when he borrowed money from the corporate accounts. After Strom is in jail, Norman discovers his notes on some new, strange-looking formulas. He plays with these until one solution turns green.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
And explodes in his face. So this puts him in the hospital for a long time, like weeks, as the best surgeons in the state worked night and day to save his life. But there has been some unhealable brain damage, and they have to wait to see how he recovers. He does eventually leave the hospital, though, because I guess they couldn't keep you for homicidal psychopathy in those days. His mood has definitely soured, and his relationship with Harry, who still looks pretty young at this point, continues to sour as well. The idea of becoming the greatest costume criminal of all time becomes an obsession.
And this is something I find a little bit funny because Norman's going, I'm stronger, smarter, tougher than anyone else, and I have all sorts of scientific devices in my chemical company that I can use.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
any of us, or put like Donald Trump in this situation, what would you think? Well, you would think, I would either try to achieve a lot of political power. I would go around, maybe start settling all kinds of scores. I would become an even more ruthless and cunning businessman. No, I will dress up in a gaudy green and purple costume and fly around on a bat-shaped glider. That's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to use all of this amazing wealth and technology at my disposal. Is I'm going to dress up in a Halloween costume and go beat up a bunch of Italians. So, well, what can you say? It was the 1960s.
And Italians have it coming, I mean, really.
The first panel on page 6 is like when you go from like, what can I do? I can become the greatest criminal of all time. Here I am, the Green Goblin. It's like you spit your drink out. It's like you serious.
And as we later find out in Death in the Family, he first considered Mr. Coffee.
Oh yeah, for some reason. My brother hated that, by the way.
He's like, I need an omen. And then he sees the coffee flying through the window. Of course. Criminals are a caffeinated lot.
Nice.
But I did like here, actually, like when Paul Jenkins did one of his, when he did the story where Norman was trying to brainwash Peter into becoming his heir. And Jenkins kind of overwrote part of the story because he had Norman, locked in this house by his dad, and he was imagining this green goblin creature haunting him, and therefore that's why he became the Green Goblin. But here, Stan actually has a much simpler, he doesn't explain the goblin thing, but he explains the green thing. And it's basically, I'll make this costume my favorite color, green, which I thought was kind of neat. There's no deep, dark psychological, aspect to why it's green. It's my favorite color. So I'll be the Green Goblin.
The face is perfect. Now, to design the rest of the costume, I'll make it my favorite color. Green.
So I'm picturing like Norman Osborn like bow-legged with like elbows bent, like hopping up and down. And now for my costume. Da, 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 da.
And then like the next costume, I mean, it just looks so comical. I mean, who's going to be afraid of that? The bulging yellow eyes, and it's this horrifying personality he's come up with, and and there it is. I mean, it's hysterical in its badness, but again, it's like I commented, though, the last time I visited you gentlemen, I mean, we make fun of these stories, but we make fun of them because we love them. I mean, and even though they are kind of silly, they have stood the test of time, more so than I think most of the stuff that's scripted today will, even though theoretically it's probably written better. But, we're not going to be making fun of it in 40 years' time because we won't have the same affection for it like we do these old stories.
Right.
We'll just get more bitter.
One question that I have is there was a debate I remember stumbling across on a message board a few years ago on when it became established that the explosion gave Norman Osborn super strength. And he does make the comment here that he's stronger and smarter. But, when he says stronger, that can have a few different meanings. And I think the earliest time that I remember them specifically saying that the Green Goblin had super strength was in Roger Stern's run when the Hobgoblin was speculating how Osborn went toe-to-toe with Spider-Man.
I can do earlier. It was in the Spectaculars #2 / Amazing Spider-Man Special #9, because when he pushes Harry and the Doctor out of the way, Harry's like, his strength! I never imagined he was so strong!
Yeah, and also in that issue, when he shakes Peter's hands, Peter's saying that he'd break his fingers if it wasn't for his spider strength.
He'd break my
And then
hand.
And then later when Peter puts like the web smoke bomb in the fireplace, and then Norman is throwing furniture around like it was paper mache. So it was established early on that he had. I mean, it was established fairly early that he had superpowers. But oddly enough, in I think it was the Who's Who of the Marvel Universe that was done like in the 70s or 80s. In its write-up of the Green Goblin, it says that none of the Green Goblins had super strength. So there was some inconsistencies over whether or not. But I mean, I think like Don was saying there, I think it was pretty well established that at least in that Spectacular Spider-Man #2 that Norman did indeed have superpowers.
Right.
But whether or not
I've always believed that he did. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
we just debated it in his early appearances, but
Yeah, Josh, you're trying to say that he doesn't hear, right?
No, I'm trying to say I'm wondering like when it's established.
I think this would be to me this counts as establishing it.
Yeah, and when it's established that it came from the formula specifically, and that, he's not just a really fit guy. But I guess a really fit guy wouldn't be able to throw furniture.
Well, it depends on just how fit.
Yeah.
What did
One
take,
of the things I never bought though was that the formula drove Norman insane. To me, that was 1960s, psychobabble to explain why, Norman was a bad guy one minute and then he wouldn't be a bad guy the next minute. How he could be.
About that.
I've always, I've always believed Norman was nuts. But all the Goblin formula did was by giving him the superpowers, it in effect removed his inhibitions. But I've always believed he was insane.
Yeah, we actually back in I think last year in Close Tiger Chronicles, we actually got into a little bit of a discussion because spoilers, like they go on the idea that Norman Osborn was cloned, and since this clone technically wasn't affected by the formula that turns into the Green Goblin, he's less apt for insanity and actually fights alongside Spider-Man. And we actually had a discussion whether Norman was a good guy that was turned evil because of the formula, or if he was always a bad guy. And some people, including Brad, thought that he always was a bad guy.
he's always
Well,
an ass, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I've always thought he was a bad guy. I mean, to me, he's obviously always had mental issues. And I think the Mathis established that early on in Norman's childhood when Norman, basically beat the family pet to death.
What?
Well, he did. I mean, basically, Norman's dad came home drunk, and it wasn't specifically said he was drunk. I kind of read that into it, but anyway, he came home crying, saying he was ruined because someone stole all his inventions, and then Norman went out, and then basically the family dog came running to him, and Norman grabbed a stick and beat it to death. I mean, so the guy is, and that's usually one of the early, what they say one of the early marks of psychopaths or sociopaths or serial killers is cruelty to animals. I mean, it was so, Norman was raised in an abusive household. So he's always had issues. I mean, he was a crooked businessman. He Like I said, he railroaded Strom. Even though Strom did steal some money, he went ahead and railroaded him so he could get him out of the way and claim credit for all of his patents and inventions and other things. And plus, he was a shitty father. I mean, it's apparent he was always a shitty father. So he wasn't driven insane by the formula. That was just a cop out to try to explain why he was a bad guy, 40 years ago, before we really started understanding, mental illness and things of that nature.
Well, as I said, there's also inconsistencies with his own father. Like, I forgot, they gave him more than one name, but like, it wasn't a, I know one story, I think Roger Stern wrote it, where his father was like just a crap, like, Norman Osborn's grandfather or great-grandfather was a successful businessman, but Norman's father like kind of drove the company to ruin and like took it out on his mom. And then I think Howard Mackey and Paul Jenkins like brought it back where his father was like insane and threw him in the middle of the house for no reason. Like there's a lot of like father son psycho crap going on. Like,
yeah.
Let's start with Harry.
Yeah. Well, Norman's father was obviously had issues. Like I think DeMathis was the first one who actually showed us Norman's father. But really in a way, even though they say that like a lot of successful business people are psychopaths, they just don't necessarily commit crimes, but they have a very narcissistic, singular focus on themselves and their own desires and their own needs to the exclusion of everyone else. But not like they said, not all psychopaths commit crimes. But when Norman's father, obviously, turned out to be both an alcoholic and a failure, a lot of those, otherwise negative personality traits, became even more manifest. So, the Osborn family has a history of psychotic behavior and really substance abuse and dependency.
So what you're saying is he's a nice guy until all the drugs.
No, never was a nice guy. Never was. I think that's a cop out to say he was once a nice guy, because it's I think it's an oversimplification of the issue. So
Well, regardless of how crazy he was at the beginning, it took several months. It says many months, which I'm going to translate to a couple of years at least to give Harry a chance to grow up a little bit, to go from explosion in your face, getting out of the hospital, to Green Goblin, riding a broomstick. Which, if you look there when he presents his broomstick and says he's going to go after his first victim, Spider-Man, it's the glider. So.
Well, he wasn't using the flashback machine yet, so this is his own memory, which might be inaccurate.
Yeah. Or John Romita just didn't read issue 14. One or the other.
Or maybe he had that, but he decided that the broomstick would, work better for his first mission, which was lure Spider-Man to Hollywood, then hit him on the head with a rock.
Right. Which is an awesome debut.
Imagine like Romita sitting in the here's the comic stand, and like Stan's like rolls up in number 14. No, like beats him over the head. He has the broomstick, but I already sent it to the presses. Grr, now people will want the broomstick back.
Like Stanley remembers what happened in 14.
Right. And
I guess he does because he flashbacks to it, but
I think if art comes in, it has to be something really, really major before they're going to change it, because that's a lot of time taken out to change the art.
Like Vermin and Lizard.
Yeah, that's the first thing I was thinking.
Great minds, Joe.
So Norman celebrates reaching this part of the story where he's the Green Goblin by putting on his mask while talking to Peter, so he can be all scary and goblin-y. And if you look at page 7, the first panel, Peter decides that while he's bound to that chair, he just can't hold it anymore, so he's going to squeeze one off.
I like that panel. How could you ridicule it? Well, that's what we do all the time.
All right, Goblin. If I'm going to leave behind a little surprise for you.
Beg, Parker, plead for mercy. No. So we change scene away from the tense confrontation. Haha, see what I did there, tense. To visit Aunt May, who is getting a visit from Anna Watson or Watkins or Abbott or Brandt or whatever her name is. May is all worried because Peter has never stayed out so late without calling. At least not since that one time a few issues ago where she bitched him out for doing just that. Anna suggests calling the Daily Bugle to see if he's just at work, but this doesn't go well. We do get an awesome bit of Jonah dialogue. No, Parker isn't here. What am I supposed to be, a lost and found department? He's probably out stealing hubcaps somewhere. Empty-headed teenagers, they're all alike. Miss Brown, come in here with your notebook. I want to dictate an editorial about how the younger generation is going to the dogs. Then I'll do one about the older generation, too. Might as well blast everyone.
I love that. That was one of my favorite.
So after that phone call doesn't go well, Anna tells May not to worry, and she's going to go out to get the poor old junkie some drugs.
Speaking of poor old junkies.
Yeah. No, but that's what she says. She says she's getting overwrought. She needs a sedative. I've got to call Dr. Bromwell. But yeah, poor old junkies. We change scene to a railroad station in the Midwest where Josh Bertoni is contemplating what will await him when he returns to the court.
What? No.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you to read it because it's a lot of
we're-
monologuing, but it is you.
It is me. Yeah, we're Betty Brant Runders. What would happen? Oh, I kind of dropped everything without telling everyone anything and without facing any of the consequences. I wonder what would happen if I go back and face the consequences.
Right.
Oh,
Why? Why does the vision of Spider-Man keep reappearing in my brain?
Why does it? Oh, you're right.
And why is Jonas like... This is an early Floating Heads of Guilt, by the way. Like, we've had Floating Heads of Guilt and splash pages before on Ditko stuff, but, like, this is the more traditional Floating Heads of Guilt that we later get from Peter.
Right.
But I love the Jonah one. He's like a train. Like a cigar.
We do get an ad for reversing baldness, and then after that, Betty Brant finishes up her scene at the train station as the train whistle blows, and she's trying to decide whether or not to get on it. And as you probably guessed by now, the pages you've just heard recapped are a typical Marvel device for bringing new readers up to date as painlessly as possible. We just didn't want you to think you'd downloaded a romance comic podcast by mistake. But now, face front.
That was good. That was like perfect Stanley right there.
Face front, it'll be web spinning time before you know it. Now, the Green Goblin pulls out of his ass an invention that I just love.
I call for the power of science!
Oh no.
Comics have this kind of invention in it quite frequently, and I always have to laugh because it's so blatantly impossible.
It's a coffee machine.
It's a retroscope helmet that he
It's
uses.
the Beatles' head.
It looks like Brainiac, actually. He uses it to project mental images of their previous battles out of his brain onto a wall.
Just call it what it is. It's a flashback machine.
It's a flashback machine. Thusly, with the flashback machine, we get a brief recap of the events from issue 14, where the Goblin did escape at the end while Spider-Man was hiding from the Hulk. Issue 17, where Norman says Spider-Man was saved by the torch, and Peter says that as far as he remembers, the Goblin ran like a scared rabbit. But Peter is actually lying through his teeth because that's the issue where he got the call in the middle of the fight that his aunt was in the hospital, so he didn't see how that one ended. Issue 23 was the Goblin and the Gangsters. That was where the Goblin tried to take over Lucky Lobo's mob, but instead the entire mob got arrested, so he had been too successful, true believers. Beating Spider-Man hadn't really been a goal in that story, so he got out while the getting was good. And finally, the two-part story from issues 26 and 27, where Norman says that the Crime Master attacking the Green Goblin was what gave Spider-Man the chance to escape. And now, through all this, Norman has been emphasizing how his main goal all along has been the destruction of Spider-Man on his way to becoming a great costumed criminal.
No. I'm just sensing like the final panel on page 11.
Yeah, I know.
You fool! Don't do it.
Don't get ahead of me. Almost there.
Go for it.
This is the man that will engineer the Clone Saga one day, folks.
Yeah. It's actually not that much of a retcon. It does kind of jive pretty well with what we saw. I mean, even going back all the way to Amazing Spider-Man 14, he wanted to stop Spider-Man in order to become, a gang leader. And the gang leader aspect of that really was emphasized more. But I can take it without it really being a retcon. So after having gotten the entire history of the Green Goblin through Norman's point of view, through, flashback machine brain scans projected on a wall, Spidey has managed to free one of his hands from the inflexible, unstretchable steel cables. But at that moment, the Green Goblin sets him free anyway.
The look on his face on that panel really
Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of Hammer and the guy who formed the Sinister 12.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Fail.
It looks like the tentacles from a Spider Slayer robot.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this later. I'm gonna say it right now. Spider-Man Blue actually did this better, where Peter like just actually he's tied to a wooden chair. He just like falls back, breaks the wooden chair, and just like leaps off the ropes that way. Instead of I don't know, the Goblin letting him go by himself for exactly no reason.
Right.
You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Parker, I expect you to get set free and attack me. Fair and fair.
After having gloated for 11 pages that Spider-Man has had his chance to beat the Goblin, it's now too late and that he's going to die, he has changed his mind evidently. Pete assumes that it's because Norman knew he was about to get loose and wanted to save face, and I'm not really sure who's right on this one.
Nobody's right.
It's fair.
No, I just think Stan has been real. Stan just got to the point and said, "Oh crap! I've only got 8 pages to finish the rest of the story. I'd better get to it," because he's had him just rambling for the last like 10 to 11 pages. And then, oh wait a minute, I think I'd better end this thing. So there we have this ridiculous plot development.
And with the ridiculous plot development, or after the ridiculous plot development, the Green Goblin gives Peter a minute to finish costuming up. So Peter takes off his shirt. He unbuckles his belt, slowly unzips his fly, slides his pants around his perfectly... No, just kidding. But really, I mean, it is like a little bit weird here that he's like undressing down to his skivvies to fight the Goblin, just like, right in front of him.
Give me a second. Let me get my gloves on. Okay, let's go.
I was like...
And as the Green Goblin's like screaming, "Dress, you idiot, dress!" And it's not that far off. From the actual. Do you hear me? I want to defeat you as I've always fought you as Spider-Man.
What is it, the Joker?
Suffice to say, the next panel, Spidey is suited up and ready to go. But then, before the youthful adventurer can make another move, he's hurled back off his feet by the staggering impact of 2 rapidly tossed stun bombs. The really giant ones that we heard about earlier. And then the final fight between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin begins in earnest. It is a pretty awesome fight, but I always hesitate to go into a blow-by-blow account during the fights, so suffice to say, Spider-Man knocks the Goblin off his glider in mid-flight, so that the glider the broomstick crashes, and then the Goblin lands on his face, bringing us to the scene on the cover. Spider-Man wonders if the Goblin's been defeated so easily, but Gobby grabs a cable on the floor and lashes it at Spider-Man, shocking him with the current. They keep going until the Green Goblin grabs hold of his fully automated Goblin cannon, which he then begins to manually aim and fire at Spider-Man. Spider-Man dives out of the way and knocks the Goblin back, causing him to fall back into a chemical spill and the mess of live wires, the combined reaction of which changes him by sheer chance into Electrochemical Man, complete with the power of wooden tables. Spider-Man approaches the prone body of the Green Goblin cautiously, wondering if he is getting ready for another sneak attack. But when the Goblin doesn't move, Spider-Man kneels beside him, makes sure he still has a pulse, and unmasks him. Norman seems confused about, how Spider-Man's not actually Harry and he needs to go help Harry with his bio homework, and Spider-Man realizes that he's lost the last few years of his life and that he thinks Harry's still in high school. Now, at first I was going to lighten to the script for forgetting that Spidey lost his spider sense last episode, whenever he says, he couldn't fool my spider sense. It would tingle if I were still in danger. But actually, during the fight, Romita does draw his spider sense tingling at times, so evidently it's been healed at some point between then and now.
Like his cold has been healed.
Yes, like his code into Node for Christmas.
I'm trying to find where spider sense is during the fight.
I saw it on the bottom of page 14. The bottom left panel. There's a Zik, a Sot, and a Fatap, and Spider-Man's got the little lions going around his head. So, the page before the bat.
Yeah.
So, Norman wonders why he's in his costume and mutters about having to help Harry with his bio homework, and this is a callback to one of the flashback scenes in the origin story right before Norman experimented with Strom solutions and the explosion. So he seems to have forgotten all the years since that time.
Yeah, and he's also forgetting that it wasn't the bio homework, it was going the parents' night or something.
Both of those were in there, although they might have been in there at different times.
When he was working on the formula, it was going the parents'
Was
night.
it the parents' night? Okay, so evidently he's lost even more memory than you think.
Somebody forgot, and it was probably Stan.
Oh.
Why didn't they just have him, it would have been perfect if he had the flashback machine, on his head or something, or he fell into it. That would have made, it would have been like plausible, and like the Chekhov's gun was there that you could have used the flashback machine to make him lose his memory, but no, he got electrical shocked.
Well, at that moment, the fire department begins pounding on the door because of the smoke, and evidently there's a fire going on that we haven't actually seen it very clearly until right now. While they're banging down the door, Spider-Man finds one of Norman's suits in a closet, and in the middle of the fire, I want to remind you, he changes Norman out of the Goblin garb and into a suit. This is also a little weird, by the way, with him taking off Norman's clothes.
Yes, he has to basically probably strip him down to his underwear, and and then he has to get a button-down shirt, pants, socks, dress shoes, and a jacket on him in what looks like to be the space of about 30 seconds. And
Right. I think if he used his spider speed, he would break Norman's arms and wrench him out of sockets and stuff.
and that's just kind of creepy. I mean, Spider-Man dress.
Well, if you want to go down to the undressing unconscious people in the Revenge of the Green Goblin story, Peter blacks out due to the goblin toothpaste, and he wakes up in a spider costume. So Goblin's like, "Remember when you did this to me? Well, here you go."
There's a Superman story where like he's woken up and he's undressed, and like he doesn't know if Lana did it or his mom did it, and like he's really upset at Lana because if she did it, it's like really inappropriate because he and Lois are now married. But like Lana like teases him for a minute and says, "Relax, it was your mom," and he's like, "Somehow that's more comforting."
Right.
Yeah, right.
That was
say somehow. Come on, now.
Did my girlfriend undress me or did my mother? This was Chuck Austin, by the way.
So Spider-Man throws the Green Goblin suit into the fire, which makes me wonder exactly what the costume is made of, if he expects it to burn, like without leaving a trace.
Unstable molecules.
Unstable. He says cloth, but I always thought it was rubber. And yeah, rubber will burn, but not very quickly.
Wait, he says it has to be rubber.
He says the smoke is so thick the fabric will be burned to cinders before anyone can see it. And if it were fabric, yes, I would agree with that. But it's not fabric.
Okay.
Oh, well.
I don't care anymore.
As
The fire is made from super science, so...
As Spider-Man flees the scene, he shouts to the police and firemen to take Norman Osborn to a hospital, and that he's a hero, having helped Spider-Man defeat the Green Goblin. Spider-Man arrives home seconds later. Yes, seconds later. From the waterfront to his house. That's how long it takes. He must be web-swinging at like lightning speed or something. So he goes in an upstairs window, changes clothes, dives back out the window, and goes in the front door.
As he thinks about female intuition.
Right. Dr. Bromwell bawls him out for being so late without calling, and leaves in a huff. Peter goes in and sits in Aunt May's room for hours until she wakes up. It says that he keeps the vigil, but I'm pretty sure he fell asleep. He reminds us that lying is wrong, and then lies to his aunt, cooking up a story about studying late with a classmate losing track of time. She notices that he's flushed and feverish and bundles him into bed so that she can dote and dawdle him to her heart's content. And in an expensive hospital room on the fashionable east side of Manhattan, a father and son seem to find each other again, as though after an absence of many long, now forgotten years.
I can't remember what happened, son. These past few years seem to be forever buried, forever lost to me. But the future lies ahead, and it will be a good one for both of us. Somehow, I know that now.
And they both die.
Yeah. And both Osborns had some very good years ahead of them, and nothing bad ever happened to that family again.
Right.
Cut to 122, cut to Spec 200.
Next issue, don't miss Peter Parker's startling decision, plus an all-new, fantastically powerful super foe for Spidey. Enough said.
So what did happen in issue number 41? Number 42 was
He got
Super
a bike.
John James, right?
Yes.
What was that?
He got a bike. That was his startling decision.
Oh, okay.
He got a two-wheeler. He's a big boy.
Yeah, 42 is John Jameson with Mary Jane in the last panel, and then 43 is another Rhino story.
I think next issue is also first headband for Gwen.
What? No, it isn't.
I think it's Rhino.
Yeah, Rhino in issue 41 and 43.
No, at the end of 41, Gwen still has the various. You won't see the headband until after Mary Jane appears.
No, you see the headband before you see Mary Jane.
No, I'm positive she changes her hair before then.
I'm opening the book right now. Hold on.
Let's do it.
I don't see any Gwen. I'm looking
I'm
through the book.
100% positive it's not until it's
No,
not
there is
until
no headband. She still has little fringe clips on the corners of her forehead.
even issues. She doesn't have her hair like that.
Hold on. I'm looking for her. Okay, yeah, you're right. Not this. She gets the headband. Maybe it's in 42.
No,
It is 42. It is
it's,
42 before we meet Mary Jane. She gets the headband.
when you get the headband, it's after her hair is straightened out, and that.
Nope. 42. She's wearing the headband.
Oh shit! Let her see.
She's inviting Peter to a party. Yeah, because this is when Harry Osborn like walks off with Gwen, and Peter's like, "Haha, Harry Osborn's got your gal."
We have given so much time to her hair over the years.
Yeah.
The long years.
She's like the Jennifer.
Right. Oh, damn you, Bertrand.
Y'all were both positive, and y'all are both positively wrong.
Yeah, I knew
As a
that she
result,
got it earlier than that, but I probably wouldn't have bet my life on issue 41.
So I'm curious whether future revisits of the Goblin origin pay any attention at all to Professor Strom.
Yeah, it's pretty established. And JR could back me up or contradict me if I'm wrong. That Professor Strom is the creator of the Goblin formula.
Oh, and he's a recurring character, isn't he? He doesn't actually die in 37.
Yeah, he comes back. He's alive now. He's on a disk drive, like somewhere in Peter's apartment to this very day.
Well, actually, he in that dreadful Penance miniseries, Strom apparently came back. Yeah, you're right. He was like reduced to data patterns or something on a hard drive. But then when they after Norman became the head of the Thunderbolts and they turned Speedball into Penance, Speedball or Penance went looking for Nitro, the guy who blew up Stanford, and during the time he ran across Strom again, who was back in his human form. So, but that was such a yeah. So, but I didn't read the whole thing, or I should say, I didn't burn steal the whole thing, so I didn't know how they explained it. But yeah,
they probably didn't.
Probably not. So,
well,
but
he's got it there. I thought he was on there forever.
But yeah, Strom is an established part of Norman's. I mean, yeah, a lot of times when they retell the origin, they always they mention about him booting Strom out of the country and then finding the company and then finding Strom's notes. So
he was in the '90s show and he was in the Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. He was in the Spider-Man movie.
Yep. We have to take the whole line back to formula.
Interesting.
And then Norman figured out in the Osborn journal that Strom had taken the formula himself, so that because Norman survived like death by the formula, then Strom was probably still alive too. So he was like a decomposed corpse that was
that was made after the appearance of Gaunt, right?
Yeah, it was made after the appearance of Gaunt.
Right. I remember I remember it came out back in grade school.
And like 90% of the Osborn journal has been contradicted.
Nice.
Pages of him like talking about how his son Harry is dead and Aunt May's dead and Harry was his only son and Peter and Mary Jane are married and how dare Mary Jane marry someone that isn't her son. Stuff like it's all the journal doesn't make sense now.
Not even a little bit.
Maybe a little bit.
I said not even a little bit.
And I said maybe a little bit. Yeah.
No, I said not even. Like, I'm right and you're wrong.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
No, just kidding.
I thought you were asking me a question.
No. So I know that we kind of did a whole lot of overall discussion when we were talking about 39, but what do we think of this resolution to the cliffhanger to the story in issue 40?
It's the only way they can do it at this time period, the way that storytelling is.
Yeah. I actually know JR doesn't really care, really doesn't like the whole amnesia thing. Am I correct?
Well, it was a convenient plot device because they didn't know what else to do with the character. But it was probably the only way they could have done it back in the 1960s because obviously Stan didn't want to put him in jail, but he couldn't possibly conceive of Norman knowing Spider-Man's secret identity and not doing something about it. So he had to have Norman conveniently forget. So, but no, I wasn't a big fan of the amnesia plot, but when you think about it, they didn't use it all that often. I mean, basically they had him forget 2 more times and then they killed him off. So it wasn't, it was pretty lame plot device, but then again, it was a plot device that was probably entirely logical in the 60s and 70s. So I'd hate to see him do it again, but
I was just annoyed when they did it with Harry, though. I mean, I thought I was alright with Norman, but like Harry's like, oh, I forgot everything. Like after the Bart Hamilton storyline, he's like, what's going on, Spider-Man? I was like, you got kidding me by this point. You can't seriously say that he has things dead, dude.
Now, issue number 40, the whole the rotoscope memory helmet, or that was, I remember reading. I thought this has got to be one of the stupidest things I have ever seen.
Oh, you haven't seen the height of that device's stupidity.
You mean it makes another appearance?
Yes, in other media. Don, you want to take this?
I just remember that.
Where else did it appear? Or
in the 1980s Spider-Man animated series,
Christ
the episode with the Green Goblin, Peter goes through Osborn's lab and he sees the machine and he remembers it from this story, and he hooks it up to himself and he's like, oh, this is the time when this happened with me, and this is when this happened. And then at one point he sees him and Norman fighting, and then Spider-Man falling, and Peter says, that's funny, I don't remember this happening. And then Osborn comes up behind him and says, because it hasn't happened yet. And then they have a fight, and then that moment happens later in the episode that the flashback machine foretold. So apparently the flashback machine can also tell the future.
Awesome. And this was in the other animated series of the 80s that wasn't Amazing Friends?
Right, the one where Betty Brant, throughout that episode, demands that Peter get her a Halloween present.
I vaguely remember that one. That was I don't hardly think that that series was seen very, very. I think it was syndicated, but I don't know that it's a whole lot of people have seen that. I haven't seen hardly any of those episodes. Maybe no more than 2 or 3 of them. So.
There was a cassette. I actually first saw that episode renting it from Blockbuster years ago.
Right. That's when I first saw it. Yeah, but no, I just. The whole story, and the story kind of had a ridiculous resolution, having him forget and everything is all right with the world. It's almost a far too neat, far too pat ending. But then again, I like I said before, I'm looking at it, 40 years later. It wasn't quite as memorable as issue number 39. So that's about all I can say about it.
I'd say it's not as memorable, but there are several things for me personally that kind of make it as entertaining. Well, the flashback machine is just stupid. I'm not going to give it the grace of swear words to explicate how dumb that is, but
assuming getting past that for a second and just looking at the fact that they're doing flashbacks to tie together the Goblin's history, do you think that needed to be done?
No.
No.
But it doesn't hurt, I don't think. Because Peter remembers fighting him, and then he's like, look at this, you beat me here, but you won't beat me here. But you did beat me here, but you won't beat me today. And then this time, you did beat me, but...
Maybe it's another new reader.
He makes that 5 times, and it's just stop stalling and kill him, for Christ's sake. But
it was probably, if we went back and read all kinds of stuff from that era, there'd probably be a whole lot of similar absurdities. So... it probably, for the relative to the times, it probably wasn't any more ludicrous than anything else.
When Betty Brant is at the train station and the radio saying that Spider-Man's been missing for days, no, he just fought people at an observatory. The Goblin has only had him kidnapped for maybe an hour at the most.
Right.
It has not been days. So
it's late at night on the day that she was captured.
Yeah.
While we're talking about Betty Brant, in the last issue, I think we mentioned how Romita tried to ape the imagery of Ditko a little bit. But on page 9, top left panel, that image of Betty Brant is so Romita, so Romance Comics / classic Spider-Man Romita style of just the way he draws that woman. To me, I think it's just so representative of style that I really adore it, even though it includes Betty Brant.
You're talking about the really wistful panel, right?
Where she has the glove cheek on her, the glove hand on her cheek, I do declare.
It's almost like Mary Tyler Moore, but that one.
I wouldn't be surprised if they use Mary Tyler Moore as a model for Betty Brant sometimes.
As opposed
to
Sniper.
This definitely looks like Dick Van Dyke era Laura Petrie. When did the Dick Van Dyke show start?
I have no idea.
Well, if we look at Wikipedia, which is always right and never wrong.
1961 is when that, and it was almost done. It had run it pretty much its entire course by this point. It ended in
Okay.
June of 66.
So it's not out of bounds to suspect that there could be a little bit of Laura Petrie going on here.
Real quick, I like the Family Guy joke with the censorship, and they censor out Dick Van Dyke. Like, bleep, Van, bleep. But that's not a thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, speaking of the Strom thing, I think that the timeline is a little off here for Strom's imprisonment because wasn't it established in 37 and like they reestablished it in the Osborn Journal and stuff too that he was in jail for something like 9 years maybe?
Yeah, like 10 years.
Yeah, the way that they have it presented here is that like Strom was imprisoned at one point while Harry was in like middle school or high school.
Right.
And it's not directly contradicted. Norman can just be telling the story out of order, but it does like mean that Norman would have had to have discovered Strom's notes in his desk like years after Strom was already imprisoned. Like he's now just getting around to like looking at these notes.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And I think that that's how one of the origin stories played it, because I remember one story where it's like, and years later I searched through Strom's desk and finally found these notes.
Whereas in the -1 story that had the infamous proto-goblin, Norman finds Strom's notes. Well, wait a minute. Let's see how that would be years later, wouldn't it? Because it was at the fight with the proto-goblin that he found Strom's notes. So now I'm confused.
Yeah, well, Strom had it's like the Death Star plans, you know. It for those who don't know, like there's so many stories about how the rebels obtained the Death Star plans that like it was retconned that there was just like different versions of it lying around. Strom had like his notes, like it was kind of like golden tickets. Like Norman kept on finding like pages of Strom's notes.
Only one of those stories is canon, though.
I love random Star Wars
Are you
facts.
talking about Star Wars or Norman?
That's not Star Wars, but not really. 'Cause
No.
everything goes together in the Star Wars continuity.
Yeah, Star Wars, almost everything is canon, unless you're one of those like diehard movie people that say that nothing is canon. But like, it's if you ever want to have fun, look up how many people got the Death Star plans for the Rebels in Star Wars Expanded Universe continuity. It's really confusing.
And of course, we know that Lucas had a single solitary plan for all of the Star Wars saga from beginning to end, right?
Right. Yeah, not so much.
Obligatory comment from me. I'm really kind of mad at Peter here, and to a lesser extent Betty, because Peter, in the last page, thinks about Betty's female intuition, which made her leave, and he says, she must have felt that I'd bring nothing but heartache to those that I love. And I really, really hate it when Peter takes the blame for this relationship.
Well, you're reading the wrong book, brother.
Yeah, I know. And I'm really mad that, like, for all these years, Betty has let him take the blame for it. It's all Peter's fault and Peter's secret.
Well, I mentioned it off the mic, but I don't like Bromwell completely throwing Parker under the bus, saying, I never thought you'd be so unfeeling, so wrapped up in only yourself. Like, ever since I first read that, I was like, you dick. Like, you don't even know what he's been doing. Like, I was like, I know the irony. I know the irony, but it's just like him assuming that Peter was like either playing basketball or smoking weed or something like that. Like, just really upset me. Like, you know he's a good person. Why do you assume the worst just because he happened to be out? I mean, it's not like he was gone for like 12 hours. He's probably gone for like maybe 3 hours or something.
Well, and it's also like no teenager has ever stayed out late without informing their parents where they were. Again, this gets to the point where, I wonder how much experience Stan actually had. I know he had a daughter, and she was probably an older child at this point in time, but Bromwell's going, what? It was the worst thing in the world he could have done. Stayed out late without calling. I mean, of all the trouble that teenagers get into and can get into and historically have always gotten into, Peter stays out late without calling, and therefore he's owed this dressing down by the doctor, and it just gets to Aunt May, the fragility of Aunt May's condition, which is just so overplayed and overstated that I guess as one of you just pointed out earlier, people were writing letters even then, tired of the old Biddy and wanting her to die. So.
that panel where she starts crying on page 7 just like really irritates me because okay, I know that they don't have cell phones or back then, but still, it's like she looks like she's worried if he's like in the hospital or something like that, and I know she is, but man,
She just wants attention.
and Aunt Anna won't give it to her. She's like, I gotta go out here and get some air.
No, on Honest Esther, even my Mary Jane has come home late occasionally. My Mary Jane like comes home late. This is
The daughter that belongs to me.
Yeah, it really makes it like hard to swallow that retcon years later that Mary Jane was not living with Anna during this time period at all. Like if you read Parallel Lives, like she moves into Anna's house for like maybe a week before she meets Peter, and then like by that weekend she had her own apartment.
That's right.
Like the way that it's written in Parallel Lives, she shows up at Anna Watson's house like with suitcases unexpectedly after having a fight with her sister, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna live in New York now. I'll have my own apartment by the end of the week." And Anna's like, "In that case, you're gonna come with me to meet Peter and Aunt May on Sunday." And she's like, "Okay." So you got to think that this is either before then, and unless everything between this issue and issue 42 happens in the span of a week. I don't know. So for like the 2 days that Mary Jane's lived with Anna Watson, she's come home late occasionally.
I had a note on the infamous Peter taking a dump panel, which John loves so much. I actually really like that. I like that panel because to me it's like in this sort of quasi Marvel does everything realistic era. Like you have Peter faced with the concept that he's not going to win this one and going to be killed, and his identity revealed to everybody. And I like how it's drawn because he's sort of like thinking to himself, kind of like saying, I don't really mind dying, but just to not explain to my Aunt May and never see Betty Brant. I think that's the first time you really see him faced with his own mortality, and I really, really enjoy that, especially from John Romita. And lastly, I was going to ask JR, when we were talking about Norman's psychology, how he probably wasn't that hot of a guy before the explosion in the face, but when he's under the amnesia, does it make sense to anybody that amnesia also changes someone's personality to like, because he knows who he is, he just doesn't remember the last few events.
Well,
So
I don't think the amnesia changed Norman's personality. I think the electrical shock changed Norman's personality. That's why he was kind of a nice guy afterwards. I mean, basically the guy just, the guy received a serious shock, so it probably rewired his brain in certain instances, in certain cases. So, they used to use shock therapy to try to cure people of mental illness back in, well, hell, even I was just thinking Sergeant Shriver recently died. He received a electroshock treatment back in the late '60s and early '70s for depression. So that's what I attributed the personality change to, was that massive shock that Norman received. It really didn't revert him to his old personality. It literally did change his personality until after a while. Then that shock finally wore off, and Norman's personality finally fully reemerged.
It's really confusing to me, just all this back and forth. I mean, we really don't. Like everybody knows, you don't really get a certain fix on the guy until Peter Parker 75, where he just comes back and says, I've been alive.
Well, they killed off Norman, about in the early '70s before. And even then, obviously Stan's been writing all up to this time, and of course we, as much fun as we've been having, we understand how clued Stan was into human nature, and then. Jerry Conway was 19 or 20 years old when he wrote The Death of Gwen and the Death of Norman. And it's been 30-something years. I mean, so the writers really didn't have a handle on mental illness or what things would drive people. I mean, heroes and villains' motivations were pretty black and white back in those days. And now with more mature writing and more complex writing and more understanding of the psychology of disturbed individuals, we can get into I guess shades of gray and probe deeper into their personalities. But back then it was like you said, the guy gets all these special powers and money and technology, and what's he wants to do? He wants to dress up in a green and purple costume with a purple purse, So it was what it was. So
well, it's also like real quick, like this is the first legitimately maniacal, like insane, as in has mental problems, supervillain that Spider-Man has gone up against. Other guys are just either in it for the money or in it in the name of science, like Doctor Octopus.
I always thought Doctor Octopus was mental too. Although I guess that was something that maybe they didn't really delve into until later writers. But I always thought Doctor Octopus was more mental than Norman, because his the fact that Doctor Octopus, I wouldn't say fell in love with Aunt May. I think that's a little bit too creepy. But obviously, May represented something that he felt he didn't have growing up. So I always thought, Ock always he had more issues than Norman. I mean, Ock obviously had mother issues and real serious problems relating to other people. That Norman had his own issues with women, but he didn't. I don't think he was near as disturbed as Doctor Octopus was.
That sounds like an idea for an article.
I know. Oh, if I only had all the time in the world.
Aunt May and Dr. Octopus in 8 Arms to Hold You.
Well, I mean, it is, Conway. I mean, it's one of the stupidest Spider-Man stories ever told. The Aunt May and Dr. Octopus wedding, because it's like, it's like so creepy. What in the world is the honeymoon going to be like?
Remember Dr. Bromwell.
It was played for laughs, though, wasn't it? I mean, I don't remember exactly because it's been a while since I've read it, but wasn't it all played for laughs?
No.
No, it really wasn't. It really wasn't played.
She inherited a nuclear island.
Exactly.
Well, that sounds to me like laughs.
No, it's very, very scientific and serious.
The Spider-Man
it was as serious as a 20-year-old writing in the early 1970s could make it. So
and Aunt May's completely complacent with the idea too, just as she was with the Mole Man a few daily strips ago, which irritated the out of me.
Well, one thing that bothered me about that Aunt May marries Dr. Octopus story, and it's been a while since I've read it, but we don't see how it happened. All of a sudden, they're getting married. Aunt May doesn't really have much to say the whole story except for, what's going on? We don't see the proposal. We don't see Aunt May saying I can't get married without my Peter. Just all of a sudden. They're walking down the aisle together.
I was about to say, if she needs her Peter, she probably could go buy one somewhere or whatever with batteries.
I never get married without my Peter. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And then, after she's rescued, she faints a lot. And then, the very next issues, she's going about her life as if, nothing happened. I mean, for all intents and purposes, she was engaged to some guy and on her nuclear island, and then he exploded. He's dead now, the guy that she almost married. And she's going about life as if everything's normal. The thing that makes her freak out is seeing Gwen Stacy again.
Well, isn't that back to our theory that Aunt May is a futurized version of Betty Brant?
Could be. Betty Brant notes that Spider-Man is a costume adventurer that Peter admires. Wasn't one of your most recent fights with him where you didn't show up to his graduation because you thought that Peter was trying to kill Spider-Man with J. Jonah Jameson?
Nice.
So, yay for consistency, especially when it involves Betty Brant.
It's a good thing that we have the same writer writing both those stories.
I know, right?
Unless...
Well, let's see what else was in the book. We do have an ad this month for more Marvel masterpieces. The Fantastic Four, number 54, is where the Torch suddenly remembers how much he's in love with Crystal. And so he flies off to save her from the Inhumans, and by that I mean kidnap her from her family.
Okay.
Oh, the barrier's broken at this point?
Yeah. It broke
okay.
It broke before the Galactus story, didn't it?
I thought that it went up before the Galactus story.
No. This is where he begins the search to get to Crystal. I think he starts using the dog and Wyatt Wingfoot or something. I forget exactly how it
Okay, because they don't she doesn't get out of the barrier until later on, because when she's looking for Johnny, she shows up at a Metro College game where Peter's there with Mary Jane.
Right, we're going to get to that. That's Fantastic Four 61. So we're going to talk about that. This is the cover that has Johnny Storm flying up the middle of the cover and little Inhuman heads all around the border. So I believe this is where that plot line of him going to get Crystal back starts.
Got it.
We also have Fantasy Masterpieces number 4, which has some Golden Age Captain America stories, plus some other random stories from 1960 to 1962. And Marvel Tales 4, which has now gone bi-monthly and reprints The Return of the Vulture from Amazing Spider-Man 7. plus a Human Torch story from Strange Tales, a Thor story from Journey to Mystery, and an Ant-Man story from Tales to Astonish. That was actually my favorite of the 2 Vulture stories. But anyways, then we have the Marvel Bullpen Bulletins page, which gives us capricious commentaries carefully cooked up to confuse and confound you. There are 2 points of interest on here. Basically, they remind us of the annuals, which 2 of those were out by now, and they remind us that there are 4 more coming over the next 2 months. And again, we're going to talk about the Spider-Man annual next episode. And also, it says the wrap-up next-ish on this page will announce the result of our poll in which we asked you whether or not we should continue to rib Brand Deck or ignore them completely from now on. Also, we'll have additional nutty news and notes from the far corners of Marveldom. So, the whole fight about whether or not they're going to make fun of DC is going to come to a head next issue. Watch it be like a total non-event. And then we get to buy some Marvel clothes, and then in the Spider's Web, Alan Friedenthal of Bayside, New York, gets the prize for writing the first letter to correctly guess that Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin.
They guessed it?
He guessed it, but it's not really that hard because issue 37 was already out when he wrote in. So I think by issue 37 it's pretty easy to deduce from the ending there that Norman's the Green Goblin, if you put all your clues in the right place. Michael Brisk writes that he had just read in TV Guide that producers Robert Lawrence and Stephen Krantz now have the rights to Spider-Man, Captain America, the Submariner, the Hulk, and Thor. So those TV projects are coming soon down the pike. And with 40 issues of Amazing Spider-Man down, if there have been no delays since this recording, there are 615 to go, which means we're about 6% of the way through the Amazing Spider-Man series for all of you keeping track at home.
We're catching up.
Catching up. And I want to close by saying, again, thank you very much to J.R. Fettinger for being with us here tonight.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to know I didn't wear out my welcome the last time.
Nope, the Goblin suit still suits you just fine.
No, it's always great to have you, JR, for sure.
It's always good to appear, so it's always enjoy it. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
And maybe if everything works out, we'll try to make that happen with Spectacular Spider-Man 2, which is quite a little ways down the road, but it's the next big Green Goblin story, and that'll be fun because there's lots of drugs and hallucinations in that one. So everybody bring your hookah, and we'll have a good time with that issue. Meanwhile, next episode, as you heard in the promo in the middle of this episode, we are kicking off our 2nd year here at Amazing Spider-Man Classics with an in-film commentary on the 2002 Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. After that, we'll be continuing on with Amazing Spider-Man 41, the Avengers Annual, the first appearance of Mary Jane in 42 and 43, and lots of other good things to come in upcoming episodes. We are excited about starting a 2nd year. We hope that you are continuing to enjoy the show and that you keep listening and spreading the word. If you have a podcast that plays promos for other shows and would like a copy of the promo you heard in the middle of this episode, do please give an email. I will be sending that out, or you can download it off the iTunes feed. Any promotion of the show, of course, would be very, very much appreciated, and if I'm aware of it, I will likewise mention your show on here in return. I am firmly of the opinion that the only way we podcasters can keep our shows going is to help each other out and spread the word for one another. And that wraps us up for this episode of Amazing Spider-Man Classics. I want to thank JR again for being on the show with us to look at Green Goblin and Norman Osborn in all of his glory. If you want to write into the show and tell us what you thought, you can do so at amazingspidermanclassics@gmail.com. We haven't had a whole lot of email read on the show lately, but we do have an episode already recorded coming up where there will be much email read, and we'll be continuing to make that a more regular part of the show. You can also contact the show by going to our website, amazingspiderman.libsyn.com. You can download episodes directly from there. You can also leave comments on the show postings. You can also click the Facebook link and like us on Facebook. There you will get notices of new episodes as they are released, or delays of episodes as they are delayed, like this one was. I got it out a couple days later than I wanted to just because of everything that was going on in my life. You know, I seem to have a problem of always missing the expected release of an episode by a day or two, so I apologize for that. It's just I tend to procrastinate and then things come up at the last minute, so we'll try to do better about that. I'm going to try to get the next episode edited way ahead of time so that it can be sitting there ready and waiting for release date. And until that time, I do thank you as always for listening to Amazing Spider-Man Classics in association with SpidermanCrawlspace.com. My name is John Wilson. Good night.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big bang-up. Wherever there's a hang-up, you'll find the Spider-Man.
The best issue since 33, in my opinion.
I'll buy that.
Cut that out.
Blooper
you know,
reel. I'm going to trade rooms, so give me just 1 second. My wife is going to bed, which means I'm no longer in the bedroom. I'm going into the other room. And aren't you all glad that you're no longer in my bedroom?
I don't know. I kind of like it in here. Feels safe.
He says my bedroom's safe. Sorry.
And the handcuffs and everything in the letter.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how I know that, like, if any bad guys come, John will know how to take care of them.
I got the mad skills.
Like Catwoman, he'll just like whip them away.
Sick 'em, Macate. Scratch out their eyes.
So, Twin Towers on the cover of 39, by the way. I didn't realize that when we were looking at it before.
Neither did I.
Well, I was going back and forth whenever JR was talking about the bookends, and it really does. And there's a nice triangular shape if you put 39 and 40 right next to each other.
When were the Twin Towers built?
Before 1966.
I don't remember when they were built. I was thinking they didn't come online until the early 70s.
That's what I thought.
I could be wrong because I remember the first time I heard about the Twin Towers was when it was they were used as the climax to the remake of King Kong, where instead of climbing up the Empire State Building, he took Jessica Lange up to the top of the World Trade Center.
You are totally right. They were not even built at this point. That is some other consecutive buildings that look the same.
Twin Towers, you know.
Yeah, that's not the Twin Towers. Never mind.
They don't look tall enough anyway.
And they don't have the right shape now that I'm looking at a picture of the Twin Towers. So I will just leave all that out because there's no need to go there.
Hey, John, Empire State University isn't real.
And Sally Averill is dead. I know. It's okay.
Still dead.
Still dead. And there are 2 points of interest that I wanted to bring up. Actually, no, in the interest of time, I'm not going to do that.
Never mind.